Welcome to This Dumb Week, a weekly live Twitter space hosted by Alex Marinos and yours truly, Dr. RollerGator. Available in podcast form on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, and others. Alex, welcome back. Have you had a sufficiently dumb week?
Yes, officially with controls and AI. My week has just been dumb.
You'll be happy to know, Alex, that we are simulcasting to more platforms now, which means that your tardiness is now amplified. So I hope you know that this is good. This is good. We are now simulcasting to YouTube and Substack at the same time.
Whoa, that's nuts.
So we'll see how that goes. It's a little.
I'm sorry,
tricky.
I'm late, everybody. In stereo.
With all of the keys and all of the authorization stuffs, but it's all connected, and as far as I can tell, we are live on all of those platforms, and that'll be fun and nice. All right, Alex, are you ready for today? Are you ready? Are you prepared? Are you set?
I can never be ready, Gator, for what right. You bring up every week.
Okay. Well, we're gonna get started with the first news of the day.
Tonight, there's an active search for a missing giraffe outside San Antonio, Texas. Workers at the Cedar Hollow Ranch say that Gracie the giraffe wandered off the property last week. Authorities say she could be in danger due to the rugged terrain as well as mountain lions and coyotes in the area. A $5,000 reward is now being offered for tips leading to Gracie's safe return.
There you go, Alex. Gracie the giraffe is missing from the zoo.
Pray tell.
For 2 weeks.
Is it a Chihuahua giraffe? Like, how exactly does one misplace a giraffe?
It is not some sort of pygmy giraffe. It doesn't have giraffe dwarfism. It's a normal sized giraffe that somehow just wandered off undetected from the zoo. For 2 weeks. It's been missing for 2 weeks. So that's how difficult apparently a giraffe is to find.
Did giraffe get access to mythos or?
I don't know, but this giraffe is on the loose. No,
excellent at evading security measures. That's all.
I don't want to stick my neck out there too far, but I hope that it's found.
All right. Good start. Let's keep it going.
All right. Next story we have on our speed run, which we do at the beginning of every episode here.
Okay, this is just awful. Listen to this. A woman is suing after she claims she got herpes from eating a sandwich from Arby's. The Oklahoma woman says she started developing symptoms in March. She went to the doctor and tested positive for oral herpes. She says that she noticed the manager at the Arby's was visibly experiencing an active outbreak at the time, and she asked to see surveillance footage. The lawsuit claims that workers tried hiding it from her, even bribed her with free food to drop it, but she didn't. She got the police involved. They were able to get that footage, and the lawsuit says it shows the manager spitting into the woman's food. The manager has now been charged with felony poisoning with intent to injure. Meanwhile, the victim is suing Arby's for allowing the woman to work near the food while having an active outbreak.
Now, Alex, I think the plaintiff is going to have some trouble because, herpes is somewhat of an expectation when you go to Arby's, if you ask me. So the fact that you are getting something that you somewhat expect. Years ago, Alex, you might be aware of the famous case at McDonald's where a woman had sued McDonald's because she spilled coffee on her lap in her car. Yeah. Okay. And that one had a novel sort of situation, because everyone's reaction in the general public, which was a good PR strategy that McDonald's employed, was to say it's coffee and you put it between your legs in a vehicle. It's hot. What do you expect? But it turns out that the details of that case were a little bit more insidious in that she had third-degree burns on her legs because the McDonald's coffee was kept at an extremely high heat, much higher than a normal average cup of coffee you would make at your home, in order to prepare people for a long car ride to the office. So they wanted it to stay hot all the way to the office, maybe 45 minutes away from the person who's driving or something like that, the long commute. So they purposely had this many degrees higher than someone would expect. So her her damage was unexpected. But I think if you're going to Arby's, you are expecting some sort of trouble, some sort of disease, at least food poisoning.
I have noticed that you have it in for Arby's, and what is the nature of this vendetta you have against this one chain?
Alex, how long have you known me and you just don't understand the obviously
No, I know you hate them, but do they serve gator meat or what?
Alex, when was the last time you had Arby's?
I don't know. I don't know if I've ever had Arby's.
Do you see why it should already be given somewhat of a deference on the gross side of food? You've never had a craving for it. You've never said, you know what, I'm hungry. Arby's comes to mind as the place I'm going to eat. There's a reason for that, Alex, and that's because Arby is gross. Arby is horrible. You can only do so much with roast beef, and they do it all, and that's gross.
Okay. See, it's an aesthetic issue you have with
I don't know if it's aesthetic, Alex. Their food is gross, and I mean, it doesn't look particularly appetizing, sure, but it also tastes gross, and so you sort of get what you pay for.
I don't know if this is still their slogan, but it seems you and their corporate are in agreement. Arby's is different, and different is good enough for some people.
I've had Arby's defenders tell me that their curly fries are the bomb, that they're good, but I'm sorry, curly fries is not a reason to go and attempt to get herpes. That's my general health stance. I didn't need RFK Jr. to come into office to sort of give me that opinion about Arby's. I already had it. So no. Speaking of other ailments to the human condition.
Breaking news, former Trump National Security Advisor John Bolton just pleaded guilty in his classified documents case. Bolton was indicted last year on 18 counts related to his handling of sensitive government information. Now, prosecutors said he shared it with two relatives for possible use in a book he was writing.
As Mr. Bolton just admitted, he put our national security at grave risk in violation of the law. Our system of classified information is designed to protect sensitive information that would jeopardize national security if mishandled. And the national defense information at issue in this case was classified at the highest classification level.
CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson joins us live right now. Jessica, thanks for your time. Will this plea help him avoid prison time?
Absolutely. He was facing 18 counts. He decided to plead guilty to one count. And so obviously, if this did go to trial, if he was convicted on all 18 or even more, he certainly faced the possibility of more than what he's looking at right now, which is 60 months probation and, of course, restitution, where he's essentially, I think, going to have to pay back the profit that he made from this book. Oh. So obviously, most cases don't go to trial. When it comes to a plea deal, both sides generally are getting something. In this case, he's avoiding the possibility of being convicted on the 17 other counts, pleading guilty to one, and assuring himself that this will be less time than if he was convicted on everything.
And Jessica, as you mentioned there, Bolton only pleaded guilty to one count of the 18 charges against him. So what's the next step here? When we look at the big picture, when do we realize if the judge is okay with this plea agreement? What comes next?
So the judge will look at and bless the plea agreement. In the vast majority of cases, not only do they not go to trial, but a judge accepts the plea agreement as long as it is voluntary and both parties understand exactly what they're agreeing to. Then there will be a sentencing, and the judge is not going to do that this week, is my strong suspicion. We're talking about months, where both sides will submit sentencing memorandum and talk about why John Bolton will say that he should get the lowest amount and no prison time. And I think the prosecution will argue that there should be something closer to 60 months in prison.
And Jessica, can you talk to us about how this particular case is different from other cases against President Trump's political enemies? I
think this is a really important question. And so apologies, I don't know if I froze there, but the question goes to the idea that this investigation actually began during, and apologies, Mugo, I don't know if I
it's fine.
froze
Keep
there.
going. Just keep going. It's totally fine.
Sorry. So this investigation actually ramped up during the Biden administration, and that is significantly different. What we also have in this investigation, something I always look to, is that in fact, career prosecutors supported this prosecution. When you look at Letitia James, when you look at James Comey, what you have are career prosecutors indicating serious concerns about those cases. And so this case, I think, is different because the career prosecutors, not people who are politically appointed, are saying, we think there's a there, and because we have the investigation really ramping up during a different administration, during the Biden administration.
That's right. Jessica Levinson, thank you so much for giving us some context there. Appreciate your time today.
Now, Alex, keen observers might realize that the reason that this Trump prosecution is legitimate is because it started under Biden, and therefore it gives it some air of authenticity, because John Bolton was also a foe of Joe Biden. He was technically a political enemy under the same sort of paradigm that you would consider him a political enemy of Donald Trump. So, it's just making sure that your team is the one who has declared him the political enemy that gives it the authenticity that you need.
I guess all that's left is to find out how many years the judge is gonna bolt on.
Good work, sir. I am proud of you. Very, very proud of you. Okay, now, Alex, I got some bad news. Okay, they did my boy dirty. They did him dirty. You could say nature is the one responsible for doing him dirty, but they still did him dirty.
All right.
Vanilla Ice sees Freedom 250 concert. Vanilla Ice sees Freedom 250 concert scrapped due to bad weather. A concert intending to commemorate America's 250th birthday as part of President Trump's Great American State Fair was abruptly canceled Friday, just 2 hours before Ice Ice Baby rapper Vanilla Ice was set to take the stage. Freedom 250 event organizers announced that the event would close early on Friday due to inclement weather in the area and would reopen Saturday morning. Quote, "The safety of our guests, staff, and partners remain our top priority. We are actively monitoring conditions and will provide updates as they become available," the organizers said in a statement on social platform X. Vanilla Ice continued to perform even though mutants were trying to kill each other in the middle of the dance floor back in the 90s. And he's not being honored by continuing to be able to play just during a little bit of, a storm. That's so disrespectful.
You think there was ice buildup?
Are you in you in a particular mood today, Alex?
I guess. I don't know what to tell you. So he was sorry. So the thing is that they did have some sort of concert thing that he was finally slated to play on.
Well,
that didn't get canceled, or
the event faced numerous setbacks after multiple artists canceled their performances, including Martina McBride, the Commodores, Bret Michaels, and Bust a Move rapper Young MC, citing political ties to the event that they were not made aware of prior to committing. Vanilla Ice, whose real name is Rob Van Winkle, was the lone holdout. After other artists dropped out, my boy was committed. He was the only one going to perform. Screw it. He's going to do it. Hours before the event was scrapped, he called the concert a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity in a post on Instagram. And there you go. "We're about to have a great party tonight," the rapper said, showcasing a massive stage on the National Mall where he was set to perform. "This is going to be epic." It was unclear whether the concert would be rescheduled for a later date. The musician had previously said his decision to perform at the event was not influenced by politics, but came from a place of patriotism and wanting to celebrate America's independence. I can't believe they did my boy wrong like that, Alex. They need to do a rain check on that, and I'm not joking, sir. This is an outrage.
Will you go watch him? Where are you going to?
I was not going to. I have other things to do. I can't necessarily just be everywhere at once, even though, that is a good movie. Everything Everywhere All at Once is a good movie. I just can't be that ubiquitous. I'm sorry. But he was really excited, and they disappointed my boy. I'm sorry. I'm a little bit. I'm personally offended on his behalf, Alex.
I'm getting Godfather vibes. The look what they did to my boy.
Yes. Well,
anyway.
Look what they did to him. 2 hours before they rain him out. Come on.
Like literally, yeah. He was the one survivor of the cancellation of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he still couldn't play.
Ice was willing to brave the summer heat, despite the melting risk. And
I demand you give yourself a duck right now. Thank you.
All right.
Yep. Well, it happened.
It does. Continuing to move forward here.
Next tonight to the NFL star arrested and charged with felony kidnapping and armed robbery. The Detroit Lions' Terrion Arnold in court wearing a suicide prevention vest. He's accused of targeting 3 victims. And here's ABC's Morgan Norwood now.
Tonight, Detroit Lions cornerback Terrion Arnold appearing in court, accused of orchestrating a robbery and kidnapping plot. Arnold wearing what appears to be a suicide prevention smock, overnight turning himself in to authorities in Tampa, Florida. On February 4th, prosecutors allege Arnold directed a group to lure 3 men to an apartment where the victims were robbed, beaten, and held at gunpoint, saying Arnold believed the men had stolen more than $200,000 worth of his personal items during a stay in his Airbnb property. But investigators say they later found no evidence to prove the victims were involved in the theft, and that Arnold reported his property missing just hours before the alleged attack. The state attorney's office saying no one has the right to take the law into their own hands. A dispute over missing property does not justify kidnapping, violence, or retaliation. A spokesperson for Arnold stating the cornerback denies any involvement and maintains his innocence. Arnold was drafted by the Lions in 2024. Tonight, the team saying they are aware of the legal situation and declining to comment out of respect for the ongoing legal process. Police had previously arrested 6 other people who were allegedly involved. 2 of them have since pleaded guilty. And David Arnold is being held tonight without bond. If convicted, he faces up to life in prison.
Morgan Norwood tonight. Morgan, thank you.
So, Alex, that story actually is very interesting to me because that's sort of how they got OJ. OJ didn't go to jail for, murdering his ex-wife. He was acquitted of that, right? He was acquitted of murdering his ex-wife and her new boyfriend. But he did go to jail after trying to rob somebody and steal back his Heisman Trophy. And then he went to prison for that for some number of years. I forget how many, but that's sort of the same situation almost. Although they didn't go to get a Heisman Trophy. They just tried to get stuff that was stolen during an Airbnb stay.
So wait. So he tried to steal stuff that was stolen from him?
That's his story. That's his version of the story of why he did this, yes.
I see. Yeah, well, it's gonna cost them a little bit, I suspect.
Apparently. Now, Alex, in previous weeks, we have done a segment where we have gone through the female teachers who have had illicit sexual relations with students, or at least those underage who it would be illegal to fornicating with said people. The female teachers that we've covered over the weeks were always numerous. Between 4 and 5 every single week were being arrested that we were covering, but we stopped because it was overkill. I was demonstrating a point that I had been seeing some sort of pattern where there was just a large, inordinate number of female teachers being arrested for such a thing, and that was surprising to me just for demographic reasons, as female teachers are typically seen as less predatory and, not necessarily as inclined to dip below the ages of appropriate sexual behavior in order to find their partners. But we've stopped going over them, but one such teacher has continued to come up every single week because her story continues to get involved. And this is Maris Nichols, who we brought up again last week because last week the story involved her being accused of having blackmail perpetrated against her by some of the students that she was sexualizing, that they had found her OnlyFans account and were trying to get good grades by threatening to expose her OnlyFans account. Well, Maris Nichols is back in the news this week with the headline from WSB TV, teacher accused of sex with students broke house arrest 85 times, prosecutors say. Douglas County prosecutors want bond revoked for a teacher accused of having sex with her students. Maris Nichols was arrested on Friday for allegedly having sexual relations with and grooming 6 students. Warrants stated that she had sex with students in a classroom, in a closet, and in one student's truck while parked at a local golf course. Last month, she was granted bond on the condition that she remain on house arrest, stay off the internet, avoid all children aside from her daughter, and more. In a new court filing, prosecutors say that over the course of 27 days, Nichols broke the curfew 38 times and went outside to her inclusion zone 47 times. Nichols' ankle monitor tracked her to retail stores and fast food restaurants, according to prosecutors. So, Maris Nichols, her story is not getting better by the day, Alex. I don't know how she's going to fare, but I don't even think if she gets acquitted of any charges that her reputation is going to be too clean after this. She's going to have to do a name change in order to continue on.
I think her and the rules are just not meant to go along. I don't know. She just does not get that there are certain lines you do not cross.
In this case, figurative lines. She's not supposed to go this far. She's not exactly. You know?
They literally do not cross this line. And she's like, what, this line or this line? Or is it this line?
It's so confusing. All right. Now, Alex.
Sorry, what side of the line am I supposed to be on again?
Now, Alex, we're going to get a little bit involved here. Now, I got a nice succession of stories here that I'm going to relate in several different ways. So we're going to go on a little bit of a journey with some of the stories this week here, okay? So this comes from the New York Times this week. Pete Buttigieg says he was separated from his children after swatting tip. Former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg said on Friday that he and his husband had been separated from their 4-year-old twins after an anonymous report falsely accused Mr. Buttigieg of posing a threat to their children. The separation lasted for 24 hours and required their children to sit for interviews with Children's Protective Services, Mr. Buttigieg says. The Michigan State Police and CPS determined the report was false, a spokeswoman for the state police said in a statement, adding that false reports are dangerous. Quote, I've been through political attacks in office, death threats in public life, and rocket attacks in war, Mr. Buttigieg, a military veteran, wrote in a Substack post titled, A Terrible Thing Happened to My Family. But it is the ugliest thing that has happened to me since my career in service began. Mr. Buttigieg noted that the incident occurred soon after the Buttigieg shared images of their family for Father's Day and also during Pride Month. Mr. Buttigieg, a Democrat, ran for president in 2020, was the first openly gay cabinet secretary, and is widely seen as a 2028 presidential contender. He has long weathered attacks over his sexual orientation. Incidents known as swatting, or false emergency calls intended to draw a heavy police response, have been on the rise as the political landscape has become increasingly volatile and polarized. While the attacks typically involve dispatching the police to private homes under false pretenses, the targeting of Mr. Buttigieg's family with false claims related to child abuse appeared to introduce a new dimension to the harassment. Mr. Buttigieg says he learned of the allegation this week when a police officer and a Children's Protective Service worker showed up to the family's house in Michigan. That night, the twins slept at their grandparents' house. The authorities required them to sit alone for the interviews with CPS workers, as is common during such investigations. Mr. Buttigieg says that the next day, when he spoke to a police officer at his house, he learned more about the complaint. Quote, an anonymous caller contacted CPS, Mr. Buttigieg says. The caller said that he had spoken to a woman who claimed to have met me at a conference several years ago in Alabama, where she said that I told her I had committed unspeakable violent crimes, and the caller believed my children were still at risk. Mr. Buttigieg says he told the officer that he had not been to the town where the woman had supposedly met him. The officer made clear that he believed this was politically motivated and said it would not be referred to a prosecutor, Mr. Buttigieg says. The Michigan State Police did not respond to inquiries seeking a report of the incident, audio recordings of the anonymous allegation, or more information about the status of any investigation into the caller. The former Transportation Secretary vowed to try to press charges against the caller. I don't know how much we can do about it, but so help me God, if there's any way to press civil or criminal charges over this, we will, he wrote on Substack, not just for our own sakes, but to draw a line I thought everyone already recognized. Do not mess with someone's kids. Now, Alex, I don't know if you're going to anticipate where I go with this, but do you have any, before I go where I go with this, do you have any reactions to the introductory story?
No, I mean I'd seen the story show up. As presented, it looks like your standard sort of CPS is an unaccountable bureaucracy with quasi judicial powers, yada yada. But let's see where you go. I'm kind of afraid to find out.
Don't be afraid, sir. Come on, I'm not so scary. I'm very, very reasonable where my takes go, always and forever. Now, back earlier this year, let's say it was March 31st, I believe, we actually did a similar story that involved Amy Coney Barrett that I'm going to play a clip from just to refresh your memory, sir. More serious, but yet still dumb news. Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett's home targeted in an apparent swatting incident. It's from NBC News. An apparent swatting incident targeted the home of Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett on Wednesday night, police confirmed to NBC News. Police in Fairfax County, Virginia said Thursday that the call was received through the police department's non-emergency line just after 9 p.m. Eastern. Officers immediately coordinated with Supreme Court police personnel assigned to the residence and quickly determined that the report was fictitious. Fairfax County Police said in a statement, no additional police resources were utilized. The Supreme Court's Public Information Office did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Barrett, whom President Donald Trump appointed in 2020, was on the bench Thursday morning for decisions. According to a recording of the police dispatch obtained by NBC Washington, a dispatcher alerted responding officers that a caller, who identified themselves as a neighbor, reported gunshots heard at an address belonging to Barrett in Fairfax County. Later in the recording, a dispatcher says, "Be advised, we have not been able to get an answer on callback to the complainant's phone number." Quote, unknown if it's going to be a swatting situation or not, the dispatcher continued, noting that the address has 24-hour security coverage for a high-priority resident of the county. Swatting refers to a hoax emergency call that prompts law enforcement responses to harass, intimidate, or otherwise harm the targets. At times, the incidents can lead to dangerous consequences when armed police arrive. Barrett and her family have been targets of threats in the past. In March 2025, Barrett's sister Amanda Coney Williams, was the target of a bomb threat at her home in Charleston, South Carolina. Other justices have faced similar threats. A woman was sentenced in October to 8 years in prison after she pleaded guilty to attempting to assassinate Justice Brett Kavanaugh. She was found near Kavanaugh's home in 2022, armed with a handgun, a knife, pepper spray, and burglary tools, according to authorities. Hang on. Is that a new person that I was unaware of? Because if you recall, we've talked about the person who was arrested in similar circumstances around the same time for wanting to assassinate Brett Kavanaugh, but did they come out as trans afterwards? Because they were a man.
Right. Well, that makes sense.
I'm wondering if this is a second person.
I mean, makes sense in a very specific way and not in another way. But yeah, or we missed a report of an assault, which I mean, we would have known.
Okay.
It's that whole weird, Chelsea Manning.
Yes.
When he was in the army, she then was released from jail and stuff like that. Yeah. Oh, well. So, I mean, I guess something might be done about swatting now.
So, Alex, that was the clip that I wanted to play from when we talked about this with Amy Coney Barrett, because now, this week, from the Washington Post, she got 8 years for plotting to kill Justice Kavanaugh. Prosecutors want more. The plot to assassinate Supreme Court Justice Brett M. Kavanaugh was as bizarre as it was terrifying. From her home in California, 26-year-old Sophie Rosk figured out Kavanaugh's address in suburban Maryland. She bought a gun, practiced shooting, and acquired lockpicking tools, black face paint, and a laser sight. After packing her gear into a suitcase, she checked the airport. Rosk flew cross-country and took a cab to the justice's home, arriving just after 1 a.m. Exactly what prompted Rosk's next decision not to proceed with her plan has long driven debate over how many years she should spend in prison, and it remains central to a new chapter in the case, the Justice Department's effort to keep her behind bars much longer. On their first try last October, Justice Department officials sought at least 30 years, but a judge handed down 8. Woefully insufficient, they said afterwards. Their opening brief, a written argument that typically challenges whether the sentencing judge followed proper procedures, abused their discretion, or both, is due Monday in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit. Experts in federal criminal law say prosecutors have legitimate arguments, but facing the broad discretion typically afforded sentencing judges. Rosk's plan took shape over several weeks in 2022. She was arrested blocks from the Kavanaugh's home and later pleaded guilty to attempting to assassinate a Supreme Court justice. U.S. District Judge Deborah Boardman handed down the original sentence on October 3rd during a 6-hour hearing, including 2 hours she spent explaining her reasoning. She was very conscious in building the record and explaining what she was doing, said Douglas Berman, a law professor at Ohio State University and author of the widely cited blog Sentencing Law and Policy, one of 4 experts who, at the Post's request, reviewed a transcript of Boardman's findings and the arguments presented by both sides. Berman expects the Justice Department attorneys to focus on the moment Rosk abandoned her attack plan and emphasized earlier arguments. It was only the presence of 2 deputy U.S. Marshals outside Kavanaugh's house that prompted Rosk to walk away. Quote, if the coast was clear, Assistant U.S. Attorney Corinne Mao said in court last year, the defendant would have proceeded to break in and shoot the Associate Justice. Rosk and her attorneys have offered a different explanation. During the cab ride, they say Rosk began second-guessing herself. When she arrived, she suddenly found herself in a neighborhood of real people, including her intended target, and the prospect of murder no longer seemed abstract. Quote, my whole perspective shifted, Rosk wrote in a letter to the judge. Boardman questioned and analyzed both arguments, but ultimately sided with Rosk's. Quote, law enforcement's presence may have moved the needle for her, but there is insufficient evidence before me that the presence of law enforcement was the only reason she abandoned her plans, Boardman said. We simply do not know what would have happened if the marshals had not been there. Once the judge reached that conclusion, Rosk's conduct after walking several blocks away and not being followed by the marshals worked in her favor. She could have quietly returned to California. Instead, she called the police and told them why she'd come to Maryland. Quote, if she had not called 911, the judge said, law enforcement never would have known about Sophie Roski and her plot to kill a Supreme Court justice. As investigators pieced together the extent of all her plotting and traveling, they established substantial steps taken by Rosk to support the attempted assassination charge, even if Rosk never broke in or fired her gun. Justice Department attorneys, the experts say, will likely seize upon portions of Boardman's findings that support their own arguments, including her description of Rosk's crime as an act of attempted direct domestic terrorism. Those actions, when viewed through the technical calculations of federal sentencing guidelines, exposed Rosk to a terrorism enhancement that yielded a suggested total punishment of 30 years to life in prison, according to Boardman and the attorneys in the case. But sentencing guidelines aren't mandatory. And after reviewing decades of old sentencing commission and congressional records, as Boardman told the courtroom, the judge stressed that the terrorism enhancement appears to have been intended to apply equally across all terrorism cases. Has never been intended to apply equally across all terrorism cases. Quote, she went into incredible details to show that her variances from the guidelines were well-founded for a variety of reasons, said Robert Bonslib, a former federal prosecutor and longtime defense attorney. Boardman also said that eight years represented a substantial punishment for someone with no prior criminal record, not even a traffic citation, and it would serve as a deterrent, she said. Quote, let me be crystal clear, so nobody misunderstands me, Boardman told the courtroom. What Sophie Rosk did, devised and nearly executing a plan to kill a Supreme Court justice in an attempt to change a Supreme Court ruling and the composition of the court, is absolutely reprehensible. Quote, a message needs to be sent to people who are considering harming judges, the judge added. Prosecutors, however, are more likely to argue that the conduct demands a louder message. Anything less than 15 years, Mao argued last year, creates a risk-worthy proposition. Quote, this wasn't some person getting picked up after writing a threatening email to a friend, Berman said. As a matter of basic policy, the Justice Department could argue you want a longer sentence to make sure people abandon this kind of plan a lot earlier. The breadth of Boardman's analysis, covering Rosk's childhood, her mental health struggles, and the origin of the terrorism enhancement and the many steps she took towards the attack, gives appellate attorneys plenty to scrutinize. Now, Alex, I would like to point out that we are now on paragraph 26 of this article. Okay, paragraph 26. Rosk was named Nicholas Rosk at birth and raised as a boy in the Southern California family active in a large evangelical church. Rosk was identified by her name at birth in earlier coverage of the case. Now, Alex, 26 paragraphs to answer the question that I asked automatically. They're gaslighting me by accident is what they're doing here. I know that they're trying to be polite and consider it not the most important detail, but telling me that I have false memories because because you're going around changing this stuff on me.
I mean, they're taking a big risk, though, to help you out. They could be accused of dead naming. So,
26 paragraphs, Alex, before they get to that point. To stop.
Well, 26 paragraphs before dead naming, really. Let's face it.
Well, Rusk reached the rank of Eagle Scout, earned a philosophy degree, Cal State Northridge, and began to transition to a woman. Sophie's depression remained unresolved, at least in part due to her gender dysphoria, which is not being addressed by her treatment, Boardman said from the bench. Now, Alex, I can kind of understand how upset you'd be because this was over the Roe v. Wade ruling that was being anticipated. There was been a leak of an early ruling. If you were spending your life in distress as a man, suddenly completing a transition into a woman, and all of the sudden the government took away your right to abortion, I could understand how distressed you would be.
Gator, I think we're looking at a double counterfactual here.
Okay.
The rare case where she was upset that if she had been born the right sex or wrong or whatever, the desired sex, she would have been prevented from aborting a child that she would have presumably conceived. So she considered assassinating the judge, but changed her mind, and now she is. Well,
it's unknown. It's unknown.
Being convicted of.
It's unknown
planning?
if she changed her mind or he changed his mind. We don't know.
Somebody changed somebody's mind anyway.
Yeah, someone changed their mind, and whether it was he or her who changed the mind of them together, I don't know.
It's up to their state of mind.
So I'm glad that I had a way of segueing from Pete Buttigieg brilliantly into that, because it just all came together in one nice big connected happy family of stories.
Sorry, how does this get back to Buttigieg?
Because the story was read in conjunction with the swatting event of Amy Coney Barrett, where they started talking about she, and I said, wait, wasn't the person who went to assassinate Kavanaugh a male? Was there another assassin? And there's a brand new update to this, the assassin story this week. It all fits together. It's a nice glove, Alex.
I see. Okay. This is...
I want you to be impressed.
A crossword for advanced solars. Yes.
Can you be impressed with my ability to glue these things together?
I frankly, I think you've done better.
All right, fine. Well,
you got to be honest.
Okay, whatever.
That was a little bit of a stretch.
Okay, fine. However, mystery solved, Alex. Mystery solved.
Yes, that is important. We now know that. What is it? Kavanaugh has only had one really, I mean, it is kind of ridiculous, I have to say. I don't know what you think about the case, but leaving genders aside, this person is being prosecuted for a self-confessed counterfactual, attempt at murder.
Yeah.
I mean, is this, why is this even a crime? Like, they didn't attempt anything.
There are plenty of crimes that do involve preparation and an initial attempt. So if you go so far into carrying out your ideas, they do have crimes for that. They do have plenty of attempt charges that they could throw at you depending on the jurisdiction. You don't actually have to commit the final action in order to be found guilty of them.
I mean, but what do you think? Is it fair per se? Is it justice?
In the scheme of things, turning yourself in when you do that, I would agree that it probably, quote, entitles you to less jail time, or depending on what your true mental state is, perhaps time in a facility where you get some treatment for your mental health struggles, since you did turn yourself in. However, particularly at the time that this occurred, we were 2 years in advance of someone actually attempting to take Trump's life, and then a couple months later, another attempt at Trump's life, and the the heat was being turned up. I don't know if you recall this at the time, Alex. The White House press spokesman was being asked directly, like, hey, we have these protesters directly outside of the House. These groups that are the pro-abortion groups are actually putting out the addresses of the justices. Is there not a concern for the safety of the justices? And the White House was like, no, it's just their right to protest. It's perfectly fine. No big deal. And then you have people who were actually engaged in plotting. And that does create a higher propensity than people who are not plotting. If you have people in a group who are plotting, that creates a propensity higher than nobody plotting, I would say.
Right. I mean, I guess if they had nipped it in the bud, Elon Musk wouldn't have murdered 14 million people. So,
I mean,
I see your point.
Justice is a complicated situation. And if you do want to spend a couple times legitimately talking about the philosophy of it, I would say that it winds up being too entangled of a subject to have an ideal. You start with a general premise that a punishment should be related to the crime that that is enacted, but then you add on a possibility that not everyone is caught, right? And so, if to the degree that there is a deterrent effect to charges, you can say that while it may be,
I'll tell you what this is a deterrent to. This is a deterrent to calling and confessing on yourself. That's what this
there is a deterrent to that. Yes, that does. Going to jail is a deterrent for calling in and confessing in general.
Yes, I mean, if they're like, well, if it's only 8 years, somebody else might try it. But I think, and if it's 30, they might not tell you about it.
I'm not aware of what situation encourages turning yourself in, except for perhaps knowing that your punishment would be harsher had you not turned yourself in. But these are all too difficult to ascertain, since again, you don't get the sentence automatically up front.
Yeah, forgetting the person's sort of other flaws, like trying to murder a person. Or at least plotting to try to murder a person. I assume that the call to the police was, in effect, a cry for help, like literally wanting to be stopped. Mm-hmm. This is the only, you would say, shit, if I don't turn myself in, I might change my mind again, which is, on its own praiseworthy, I would think. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I don't know. It just sounds...
I buy that.
I really don't like convicting people into especially enormous sentences for not even attempting, but planning to attempt or something and turning yourself in.
It gets tricky, right? So if this was not a Supreme Court justice, if this was just your humble host here, who is technically the true president, but unrecognized by the establishment as being the true president, I just wind up being some other schlub. The severity of the way that they would go after the person wouldn't even be as hard, right? There'd be so many things about this case that were, let's say, different, that you could call it unfair. Why is I think I'm more important than Brett Kavanaugh, at least in my sphere of life.
Yeah.
Lots of things rely on me that don't rely on Brett Kavanaugh, and so in certain ways, I'm irreplaceable.
To save his life.
So I'm irreplaceable in many spheres where you substitute me for Brett Kavanaugh and the whole thing collapses, right? You can't. We're just not swappable in that degree, and so if the charge is harsher because of the target, that adds a degree that people can say is unjust. I don't know if there's a perfect answer,
Look, the terrorism charge is straight up regime maintenance, right? It's literally saying this person is very important to the regime, and taking him down would create
it's not
additional violence.
I mean, I don't know. The regime. It is the U.S. constitutional placement of a person. There is a little bit
terrorism is a very, very extra constitutional type of thing. As a definition and as a designation. But beyond that, I'm just saying it's literally an enhancement for political importance of the target.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. So on terrorism stuff, I've always generally agreed that the nomenclature, the term, the idiom is sort of just weaponized to try to add punishment to people who you want to punish more without having a truly strongly coherent definition that encompasses all people who it should encompass and leaves out all people it should leave out. It's
wasn't it non-state actor violence or something ridiculous that just gives the game away? Political violence by non-state actors or something like that.
It does typically involve action taken that is for a political purpose, meaning subject-wise, not just that it is a political agent. So the government of any kind is a political institution, but they're not necessarily attacking you over a political item.
I know, but when Trump kills the Ayatollah, that is definitely political violence. But they will say that because the U.S. government is a state entity, state actor, it's not terror. Literally, that is.
Well, you're referring to international conflict.
Well, what does international mean? Cross state. It's literally it's a state actor is not going to do stuff internally. I mean, they will, but then they have.
Well, right. Well, I mean that we have an asymmetry here. We have a U.S. citizen attacking a Supreme Court justice where the terrorism charge is being used. So the asymmetry of the state using force against a citizen would strictly be different than interstate. So that's where I'm sort of.
Anyway, whatever. Long story short, I just find it very uncomfortable that, however heinous the contemplated crime, to me, it's just uncomfortably close to thought crime, essentially. The person didn't actually take any actions that, but for their own words, would have given any evidentiary footprint to convict them of anything.
Well, yes, but that's slightly different than giving them a break because they confessed. They took actions. And the fact that they might have not gotten caught or no one would be none the wiser doesn't stop the fact that they took those actions. So if you're saying that the fact that they turned themselves in is somewhat of a reason that they should be completely let off the hook for the action that they took, is a little bit different than should be given leniency because of turning them in indicated that they didn't actually want to have the intent to go through with it at that moment.
Anyway, we can keep going. I think with a little bit more time to sort of sculpt my words, I think I could make an argument that punishing somebody for planning to do a bad thing is like the thing that you keep talking about, which is going upstream of the thing you want to avoid and making the prerequisites illegal too, just in case. But anyway, whatever. We don't have to keep going on this.
So what, Alex, what you're saying is you're arguing for the ability to have as many contingency plans as you want for who you're going to eliminate under certain circumstances, and there should be no penalties for those contingencies being written down and planned out. That's a difficult one. Yeah. That's a difficult one. I can see where you're talking about the downstream issue, and I'll have to think about that as the premise that you're touching on there. But okay, moving on. We have actually some good news, Alex. We're going to have some good AI-related news this week, and that's not going into Traces of AI Dystopia. This is that segment is much further down in the list today, so we're not starting that anywhere near here. We actually are going to hop to a tangential situation that is somewhat related, but it is going to not be directly related to the good news. So just be aware that I will be segueing into another transitionary story, Alex, and you may not approve or may not be impressed with how I transfer into that next topic, but we'll see. Here's the good news this week, AI related. Scientists decipher new secrets from ancient scrolls scorched by Vesuvius eruption. Quote, finally able to read them. A University of Kentucky project using artificial intelligence to help decode an ancient Roman mystery has led to a major discovery, researchers announced Thursday. In 79 AD, the eruption of Mount Vesuvius buried the Roman city of Pompeii and the nearby town of Herculaneum. During a dig in Herculaneum in the 18th century, archaeologists found 1,800 papyrus scrolls in an intact ancient library deep under the site of a villa that was destroyed by Vesuvius's eruption. But reading them was impossible. The scrolls are brittle and charred, and unraveling them turns them into ash. For centuries, researchers have worked to interpret the scrolls. Recent technology led to a breakthrough. A particle accelerator and AI were used to identify ink, even faint traces, allowing researchers to virtually unwrap the delicate scrolls. But interpreting the ancient language is another project entirely. In 2023, Brent Seales launched the Vesuvius Challenge, a global competition offering prize money for those who can help interpret the writing. The three college students became the first to extract words from a carbonized scroll in 2024, but they only interpreted about 5% of one scroll. The second phase of the challenge led to Thursday's major discovery, the University of Kentucky's Stanley and Karen Pigman School of Engineering, which leads the research in collaboration with the Biblioteca Nazionale di Napoli Vittorio Emanuele III in Naples, said that experts have virtually unwrapped one entire scroll, recovering more than 70 columns of text from another, identified 2 new books from ancient Rome, and recovered sufficient text to support new critical scholarly editions. The virtually unwrapped roll, P. Herc 1667, is one of the oldest in the collection, Nicolardi said. Now that it has been unrolled, efforts to determine the authorship of the paper is underway. One of the books revealed that the philosopher Philodemus wrote an 8-book series. Only one book had been previously known to exist. Quote, for nearly 2 millennia, many of these texts would have been physically preserved but intellectually inaccessible, Seales said in a news release. Today, after years of interdisciplinary work combining advanced imaging, artificial intelligence, academic research, and an innovation contest, we are finally able to read them. The amount of text revealed means scholars can read the scrolls as complete arguments rather than fragments. Federica Nicolardi, an assistant professor in papyrology at the University degli Studi di Napoli Federico II in Naples, said that marks a transformational shift for researchers. Today, we are hearing voices that have been silent for 2,000 years, Seales said. For the first time, we are uncovering and reading them, but most importantly, we are beginning to understand them. Still, more than 6,000 scrolls remain unopened and unread. Giorgio Angelotti, a project lead in the Vesuvius Challenge, said the effort is ongoing and the archaeologists need everyone's help to read the scrolls. Seales said he believes the entire library can be deciphered. Quote, this is no longer just about imaging or machine learning, Seales said. Now we need experts who can read it, edit, and understand what they're saying. Now, Alex, I don't know if you're going to anticipate where eventually I will take this, but so far this is pretty nice news. A little bit of a celebration, even if you don't read ancient Greek and don't necessarily care what the texts say. It's still, decent news to be able to piece together parts of what we previously thought was lost history.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There's no trick. There's no trick to that lead-in. You're not going to be.
I've spent many years of my life trying to avoid ancient Greek, especially in school. But keep going.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna go and jump into something from the Smithsonian this week that delves into the history of this endeavor just a little bit more, because then at the tail end we're going to catch where my segue is.
What are the Herculaneum scrolls and why are they important?
Well, they're a collection of carbonized papyrus scrolls from around 2,000 years ago, ancient Roman times, that were buried by the eruption of the Vesuvius volcano, the same one that buried Pompeii.
Joe Marchand is a Smithsonian contributor who's covered this story for several years now.
Often the scrolls are described as the only intact library we have that survives from the ancient world because they were buried by the volcano. You've got these carbonized scrolls that were kept underground for all that time, so they have survived. But the only problem is you can't unwrap them to read them without destroying them. So they've been this big archaeological mystery since they were discovered in the 18th century.
What do they look like now?
Some of them have been pulled apart and are basically crumbled into dust and are in hundreds of pieces. But there are a few hundred that the sort of worst, most charred cases, if you like, that were left intact as a lost cause. They've been described as saggy brown burritos is one of the least rude descriptions that I've heard. They're kind of crumpled, crushed, wrinkled. I mean, they look like nothing. They were thought supposedly to have been pieces of coal by the workmen who first uncovered them in the 18th century. So they just really look like very sorry objects indeed. You would not think that you were going to get a lot of information out of them.
Do we know how they were recognized when they were found as carbonized scrolls? It sounds like they could have easily been mistaken for something else.
Yeah, well, a lot of them were supposedly just thrown away or burned even for heat by the workmen, these 18th century workmen who were first uncovered them.
What these workmen had discovered was an ancient library buried underground since the Vesuvius eruption in 79 AD.
The library itself was situated in this luxury Roman villa on the shore of the Bay of Naples. It possibly belonged to Julius Caesar's father-in-law at one point. This beautiful villa with walkways, columns, statues, works of art, courtyards, this luxury residence. The workmen are digging tunnels essentially through the site, sort of uncovering it, find these lumps, initially just think that they're coal, burn them, throw them away. To be honest with you, I don't know exactly how it was first realized that that was not what these things were, that they were actually incredibly precious. But once that was realized, then there was incredible interest then in trying to read them. This was a really unique, spectacular find. We just don't have literary written sources from the classical world. Most of the works of literature or philosophy, or whatever it is that we have been sort of copied and therefore selected through the centuries. But to actually have these original pieces from the time is just really, really incredible. So there was all sorts of efforts to try and open these scrolls, most of which ended up being very, very destructive.
What else has hindered efforts to read the scrolls, aside from the fact that they fall apart if you try to physically unroll them?
Yeah, so technically this is an incredibly difficult challenge. There have been attempts to open them, and essentially you end up with hundreds of pieces or strips, because it's incredibly thin, this papyrus. You might have sort of hundreds of rolls. So imagine it tearing off in strips, but then you've got different layers then stick together. So each of your strip might consist of a different number of layers, and then you've got to try and piece those together as a jigsaw. So there has been a lot of work going on among papyrologists to try and decipher, translate, interpret those pieces, sticking the bits back together. But then they were kind of put aside as a lost cause. I think a lot of people thought that those were never going to be read. They were just going to sort of sit there in the library archive.
As Joe mentioned, the scrolls were incredibly fragile. But that's really just the beginning of why researchers were so stumped. First, how could they separate all the layers of paper?
You've got to find a way of looking inside them, working out where the surfaces of the papyrus are, and then reading the ink. They're so crumpled, and you've got all of these layers. Some of them are stuck together, rolled very tightly. How do you even image and find the surfaces?
Yeah. Then there was the ink itself.
A lot of ink from ancient papyri has got iron in it. So if you X-ray, that ink will glow very brightly. But the problem with this ink is it's just carbon and water. It has exactly the same density in X-ray scans as the papyrus. So you can do your X-rays, you can do beautiful 3D scanning, whatever you're going to do, but it's like doing an X-ray of a body, but you're looking for the bones, but the bones are completely transparent. Like the ink doesn't show up.
Enter Brent Seales, a professor at the University of Kentucky.
He's a computer scientist, so he's not a classicist. Quite an unusual person to be spearheading this attempt to read these ancient scrolls. He was originally interested in computer vision and then got interested in how could you use algorithms to flatten out images. One of the first things that Brent Seales worked on was a very old copy of Beowulf in Old English that was kept in the British Library. Part of the problem when you take photographs of very old manuscripts like that is it's all kind of warped and sort of folded and cockled. The surface isn't flat. So if you just take a photograph of it, you're not going to be able to see all of the writing. So the idea was to develop software where you could scan this not flat three-dimensional surface and then flatten it out so that you would have a nice flat surface. You could read all the writing. So then moving from there to actually virtually unwrapping something that was rolled up. And a few years ago, the team did that on an old scroll from Ein Gedi on the shores of the Dead Sea that was burned by fire in the 6th century AD. And they took the CT scans of that and were able to then virtually unwrap that surface and see that written inside was actually some text from the book of Leviticus. So that was an incredible advance.
Then, in 2005, a colleague showed Brent Seales the Herculaneum scrolls.
And he told me that just blew his mind, like just the scale of that challenge and the potential for the information that you could find. But he's quite interesting in that he isn't so interested specifically in some of these ancient Greek and Roman sources that most papyrologists would be interested in. He's actually a devout Christian, and he is really interested in the origins of Christianity. The volcano erupted 79 AD. These scrolls were buried. So, this was the time when Christianity was just beginning, and the philosophers in ancient Greece and Rome in that world would have been very aware of what was happening, probably interested in this new religion that was starting up. He told me that what he was really dreaming of, really interested in, is finding out more information about that. Can we find information from early Christian sources? There's the huge technical challenges, but one of the biggest problems he's actually had is getting access to the scrolls to even study them and to try to develop these techniques, because they're incredibly precious and incredibly fragile. So curators who are in charge of these collections, the last thing they want to do is give them to some computer scientist who wants to carry them off to a particle accelerator somewhere and send beams of X-rays through them.
Were there any unsuccessful avenues that were part of this that were included in your reporting? Any attempts that didn't pan out?
I mean, I think there were lots of teams trying different things, trying to train their algorithms in different ways. So one thing that Seales thought they might be able to do was to train the algorithm on the letters from the parts of the scrolls that had been read. But that ended up really not working very well. It seems that you have to kind of train your algorithm on the same scroll of the scans that you're trying to read, which is obviously very difficult because you can't see the ink. How are you going to do that? One of the first real key breakthroughs, there was an ex-physicist called Casey Handmer. He was actually looking at the images that were coming out from inside this scroll visually and just spending hours and hours poring over them. He was convinced that if a machine learning algorithm could see a difference, a lot of those are trained based on the human visual system. So he was thinking, well, if a machine can see it, it must be possible for a human to see it if we just look carefully enough. So he's poring over these images and eventually notices this very strange, like very subtle difference in texture. So normally in the CT scans, you can sort of see the woven strands of the papyrus. And then in some places there was this, it's described as being like cracked mud on a riverbed, the sort of geometric kind of cracks you get. So they called it crackle. He was trying to look at this, trying to work out where it was, and then realized in one place it seemed as if it was forming the shape of a letter. So he was like, oh my goodness, this is the ink. It's not showing up as a different color, it's not glowing brighter or anything, but there's just this very, very subtle difference in the texture of the surface where the ink is sitting on the papyrus. And he was awarded the first ink prize for doing that. So then other competitors were able to use that to train their algorithms. Now they've got a foothold. They've got something to start training their algorithms on the difference between ink and not ink.
Yusuf was one of two people to find that first word. It was, drumroll please, purple. So that was the first word, purple, which is lovely. I love that it was just such a rich, evocative word. Joe Marchant.
So immediately That said to the papyrologists, we think this is a new work we've never seen before because purple is quite a rare word. Purple porphyras is the name of a dye. It was made from sea snails, so very expensive, difficult to make, so used to dye the emperor's robes. This was a sign of wealth, luxury, rank. It's just this lovely sort of, just evocative word. So that was the first Letters Prize awarded in October to Luke Ferritor, who got the first place for that prize.
Luke Ferritor was a 21-year-old computer science student at the University of Nebraska. Yusuf won second place. The two reached out to one another after the announcement, eventually deciding to team up. They were joined by a third student named Julian Schillinger. Together, the three set their sights on the next phase of the competition.
When the whole challenge was set up in March 2023, they had this big $700,000 grand prize for reading the first passages from the scroll, and a deadline was set for that prize, which was 31st of December 2023, so the end of that year. Nat Freeman said it was getting nearer and nearer to the end of the year, and they're not getting any entries for this grand prize. They were getting pretty worried. They were starting to send out messages going, so how's everyone getting on? Let us know your progress.
Entrance to the Vesuvius Challenge worked right down to the wire. Yusuf and his teammates were no exception. What were your last few days like prior to the deadline?
They were quite sleepless. I was trying to make sure that I am not submitting on the last day, which I usually do, like in every other thing. I knew that a lot of people would be submitting at like the very last day or the very last minute. I was also not sure about, there was a time factor, like if you get to the threshold of winning first, you win. I was not sure, where are we on that? Do we have the best models? Where are we? You don't know about other teams. And so you also want to guarantee that you're first in case there's like a tie. So there was like the time factor and the quality factor, and you're trying to, okay, do I submit now? Do I try to make it better over the next week? Is it getting better? Is it not getting better? And I made like one submission.
All right, Alex, that was a little long. Did the name Luke Ferritor stick out to you in that story towards the end there?
Check your signal.
What was that?
Yes. Check your signal.
Okay.
Yes.
Check my signal. Okay.
Exactly where you were going.
Oh, I'm glad you did. Yes. Okay. So here's kind of where the transition point comes in. Is Luke Ferritor, Alex, to beat the punch here to who Luke Ferritor is in this story. He actually became somewhat of a hot item, not in a good way, unfortunately, in the press as the Trump administration was coming into its second term. And I'm going to highlight that what the heat that he was getting by this article from the Bulwark, Alex, written by the insufferable Jonathan Vinny Last, titled "The Boy Genius Who Killed 14 Million Poor People." On the next level, yesterday, Sarah, Tim, and I talked about this monster Bloomberg profile of Luke Ferritor. I cannot recommend it highly enough. You probably have not heard Ferritor's name before. He is one of Elon Musk's 23-year-old DOGE bros who helped dismantle key parts of the federal government, including USAID. The particulars of Ferritor's story are idiosyncratic. He is in almost every way an outlier, yet the moral component is universal because it presents a simpler question: what is the nature of accountability? Luke Ferritor grew up in Nebraska, and what struck me most reading his account of life is the extent of his privilege. His father is a university professor. His mother is a physician. Ferritor seems to have been a child prodigy whose talents were recognized, encouraged, and incubated almost from the moment he hit puberty. He was supported by both his well-to-do family, his community, and a number of institutions that exist to identify and elevate gifted children. In other words, Ferritor's story is not one of a misunderstood genius who had to fight through an uncaring system. It's quite the opposite. Ferritor was homeschooled and by age 15, he was lauded for the art installations he created. He was recruited into the University of Nebraska's celebrated Rakes School, which is the engineering equivalent of being given a golden ticket. He got an internship at SpaceX and a $100,000 fellowship from Peter Thiel. He won part of the Vesuvius Prize for contributing to a team that decoded a burnt ancient scroll using AI routines. According to Bloomberg, he had job offers from more or less all of Silicon Valley by the age of 21. So like I said, privilege. This is a kid who worked hard but never had to hustle, who was never told no. Even in settings where authority figures expected certain things from him, Ferritor was allowed to go his own way. Quoting, "School was never a priority for Luke, and that was well understood," one classmate says. Unlike them, Ferritor challenged professors about assignments and skipped classes to work on the music project, to work on the scrolls. It's what kind of set him apart, because he would just grind on side projects and learn, says another classmate. Ferritor didn't always invest himself in group projects. Some classmates say Rakes is supposed to be all about collaboration. The program culminates in a project meant to solve a real problem for a company or organization. In November of his senior year, Ferritor told his group he would likely drop out before theirs was complete, according to one of them. Now, Alex, before we continued on to the somewhat tangential but very much related sequitur that I have here, I would like to talk about the actual Vesuvius project in general, your opinions on it, tech stuff, and also Luke Ferritor and your reaction to the heat he got and the tone that people like Jonathan V. Lask took towards him at the Bulwark. Alex, sir.
Sorry. Sorry, I missed the question.
I was just saying now before we transition on to the next part that I'm going to connect to this story, I would like to spend some time talking about the Vesuvius project in general, because it is a nice story. Possibly your thoughts on the technological problem and some of the attempts and solutions that you might be aware of, or just even conceiving of solving it, as a hobbyist. You have a PhD in computer science, so it's not exactly just a hobby, but of course we all have our hobby projects in our personal little, tinklings. And, but also then the way that Luke Ferritor was treated, particularly by evidence in this Bulwark column.
Yeah, I mean, these people are just off. I don't know. The whole Ferritor thing was radicalizing for me. This is why I know the story quite well, because they were really trying to get him killed at some point, like legitimately. I suppose they would have been subject to prosecution if they had confessed. But early DOGE was just really trying to get in there and cut expenses from the government, whether you feel those expenses were worthwhile or not. The government is literally borrowing more than it has to overspend on everything. So, whatever. However, so he seems like literally the salt of the earth, the kind of person you want a lot more of. If any sane country that has 5 people like that tries to figure out how to make him 50, right? The Vesuvius challenge itself is fascinating to me, because you do often read about history and stuff, and a lot of it has to do with reconstruction of what we have access to, right? There's people who are trying to recreate certain battles in order to figure out how the physics of the particular valley, for example, they use a 3D game engines, let's say, right, to recreate a particular landscape on which a battle took place in order to figure out which of the various historians are closer to presenting a realistic description for how the battle took place. Example, right? This is an example of using extremely modern technology and extremely ancient writing and trying to put it together and seeing what's what. So I really like this stuff, and I find it fascinating that this professor, in fact, is a devout Christian, because once you dive into what we have of ancient manuscripts, it becomes believing in the Bible as, like a singular piece of text that has come down to us from the ages and whatever, becomes extremely difficult, right? Like there are entire segments of multiple verses in the Bible that appear in 1000 AD. Like they literally just show up. All the versions of the Bible we found before then don't have that stuff in there. And they are extremely, by coincidence, they're extremely critical for specific dogmatic issues like the Trinity, right? So I find it fascinating that this person is clearly extremely capable and dedicated and wants to find the earliest texts we have from the earliest Christian ages, and somehow is maintaining faith, even though clearly he must know what we know about the earliest copies of the Bible that we have access to. So that's spectacular. Anyway, but I generally love the concept of trying to recreate, what things in the past were like. So I don't have any particular angles for you to take, Gator. Though I will say something slightly tangential but sort of related by technique is that recently I was fascinated by this paper that came out, which showed combining a deep learning model and a generative model to find a new indicator in EKGs that human doctors could actually spot by eye, and it was an indicator of early cardiac death. So basically, that's
more data. That's more data. We know what happens with more data. More data is bad. Right. You learned that from last week, Alex. I listen. If you're not going to upgrade your models of the world by learning that more information is always bad in medicine, I don't know if we're going to be able to make much progress.
Sorry. I apologize for that. Anyway, I found it quite exciting that they basically went deep in with deep learning and then backed out via generative AI to find a novel heuristic that human doctors can use to find signs of early cardiac death in EKGs. So in the sensors we already have, with the brains and eyes and procedures we already have, they managed to find something that we could add to our diagnostic sort of checklist.
Oh, okay.
We'll save a bunch of people.
All right. Then it has a good component. It makes the doctor still feel important.
That's right. That's correct. Yes.
That's good.
Yes.
We need your talents, but here's some extra information that you can use.
We need your talents, but you need to keep us employed. But all in all I'm saying is that I find it fascinating when you take an echo of something like a very poor data source and manage to unwrap it, going through all the various disciplines and whatever to figure out more parts of the missing puzzle. Now, it would be, I did for a moment there wonder if we'll end up unrolling some sort of ancient shitpost. Aristophanes has a play where he mocks Socrates, for example, right? And it's all right. I guess
I banged his mom. Last night.
Yeah, I think it's called the Theravamon. It's the ones who walk in the clouds, and I guess he's making fun of him for not being based, I suppose, or the ancient Greek analog of that and whatever. But okay, or it could be something.
Will we find any ancient lols?
That's right. Ancient Greek theater, the comedy segment was very vulgar. So maybe.
All right. Well, so one little aspect that I wanted to touch on is the use of the word AI, because I think there's a lot of people who are not in this world the same way that you and I might be. So the term AI doesn't necessarily have a clear meaning, right? That in the use in this particular case is not 100% in the way that it might be commonly used now to talk about things that are mostly generative in nature. Right. So, yes. For those non-technical people in the audience, I would like to just spend a little bit of explaining why something like this might be called AI, even though its manifestation isn't really exactly like
it's
you
not
might
a
be supposed to.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
It's not a chatbot and it's not an image generator. What it is doing at a core level, they were taking slices of these scrolls in a like a CT scan type way, and eventually with a particle accelerator. But what they were doing was attempting to get the waves to interact with this so that they could take cross sections of it, so they could take slices of it, and using those slices, they were attempting to use the computer algorithms to discern as much as possible what might be ink and what might be paper. And if you can discern on a cross section what might be ink and what might be paper, and you can continue to do these cross sections downward, you could reconstruct in a way something that you could virtually unroll and then read. So you would basically just imagine stacking these images of things that you've determined are ink versus paper, and you could recreate the image of what the scroll would have looked like unrolled without having to unroll it. Now, they call it AI because it takes a lot of computation in order to be able to differentiate based off of what something looks like to classify it as ink or paper. It's not extremely simple to just have it know automatically that a pixel representation is going to be ink or paper. It has to learn that. So the learning process is really where they call it AI, artificial intelligence. It's the learning process. Now, if you want to be pedantic, it's not even really anything like intelligence. It is what they call regression. It's the
raw components of intelligence, which is pattern matching, right? Like ultimately, you're trying to distinguish A from B. And, again, what we have now as AI, I think like you're trying to get at, like before 2022, before, generative stuff became a big deal, there were decades of people developing other types of AI that didn't mature to this level. And I think a lot of what was talked about in the Vesuvius challenge is all those other kinds of ML, like convolutions or whatever.
Just think about how far we've come in like a decade or so, Alex. I believe off of the top of my head, my memory is the acronym was NIST, which is a free open set of handwritten letters that you could have taken anytime you were attempting to train a perceptron to try to be able to identify handwritten letters.
Right.
Like that task was actually in just a decade or so ago, very fragile and prone to error. Even just identifying handwritten letters and being from an everyday human now, being able to identify handwritten letters and cleanly be able to translate them into the characters just in computer text was an extremely difficult prospect. So while we're not doing necessarily the letter recognition as much here, we're just trying to get an image of it that's unrolled in a scroll. Still, the way that we've advanced in the last couple years, just the last decade, in being able to do these things with much more clear fidelity is striking. It's sort of like a Moore's law right now that we're in an accelerated scale, just with the ability to do things.
Just to be clear, a project I did maybe a year ago, so just add a year worth of progress on top of that, was to tell Claude to, maybe it was 6 months ago, I don't know, something like, many versions of Claude ago, was to tell Claude Code to train a neural network for me, right? So now we are telling an AI to make me an AI that can scan what's on my webcam and read the letters and figure out what kind of thing it is, or even scan the shape and tell me, if it is one of a number of 3D shapes I gave it. Because basically I had a 3D printed project I wanted to make, and it had a ridiculous number of parts. And I wanted it to help me sort of sequence all the different parts, so I'm not looking, at every step, I'm not looking through like 1,000 different baggies and, printed pieces. So, it helped me like put it, I showed it everything once, and it helped me put them in order, so that then when I'm building the thing, I can actually like have a fairly small selection to work through. But like it literally took my jumbled description of the task and trained a neural network that will look at my webcam and tell me, when I showed it a thing, it would tell me, where to sequence it. And it became so simple that even my kids could do it. Like they literally would be like, they would show it a thing and it would tell them a number and they would put it in the right order and continue. Right. Like, I mean, it's insane that like now we don't even I'm sure there's advanced use cases that require people, but like some amount of that technology is now able to be created by AI.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's a great golden age. Now, Alex, I'm going to move on to where I'm connecting this story for. So the animosity that was in Jonathan V. Last's article at the Bulwark towards Luke Ferritor has lingered and kept on and is now being amplified and retargeted in a new way towards Elon Musk. And I'm going to start this new section, piggybacking off the previous one, with a statement from Elon Musk on Twitter on December 2nd, 2022. Alex, Ro Khanna is great. Now, that's how I'm starting that, Alex. Hopefully you understand the humor in that.
Oh, shit. Shit.
All right. So, for those who don't know, Ro Khanna is an American politician. This is from Wikipedia's intro to him. Is an American politician and attorney serving as the U.S. representative from California's 17th congressional district since 2017. A member of the Democratic Party, he defeated 8-term incumbent Democratic Representative Mike Honda in the 2016 general election after first running for the same seat in 2014. Khanna also served as the Deputy Assistant Secretary in the United States Department of Commerce under President Barack Obama from 2009 to 2011. So just remember, in 2022, the tweet from Elon Musk, Ro Khanna is great. Now, Ro Khanna recently appeared on what is apparently the largest or one of the largest podcasts that's in the Democrat side. It is called I've Had It. It's on Substack and is apparently one of the largest, if not the largest, currently popular political podcast on the left/Democrat side. So the same side that might be watching The View is apparently also watching this I've Had It. And he recently appeared on the podcast, Alex, and I'm pretty sure that you haven't heard the whole podcast, and I'm not going to play the whole podcast, but I'm going to play the choice segments to continue on with this story.
Switch gears here to Elon Musk. And this is just, it's unfathomable what is happening. He is now worth at least $1.3 trillion. Pop this up, Kylie. Elon Musk, if he lost $1 trillion, Congressman, he would still remain the world's richest person per Bloomberg. And we're seeing reporting that Elon Musk has made more money in the last 24 hours than Warren Buffett has in his lifetime. This is just unfathomable that we have a system that allows this.
Not Warren Buffett. Oh no. That is completely unfair to Warren.
I'm sorry, Alex. Warren Buffett.
Yes, and he
You heard it. You heard it here, Alex. Warren Buffett
has more money than Sweden, than Taiwan, than countries' entire GDPs. I mean, it is a absurdity. And people say, well, don't you believe in entrepreneurship and innovation? Sure, but that doesn't mean that you accumulate $1 trillion. That's because we've had low corporate tax rates. That's because we haven't taxed stock buybacks. That's because we haven't had collective bargaining. That's because we haven't had appropriate marginal tax rates. So it's a lot of things in a rigged economy that have allowed for this kind of accumulation. And then when Bernie Sanders come around and I'd say, let's have a 5% tax every year on these billionaires and trillionaires, people, they get all upset. They ran a primary challenge against me because of that. I mean, the guy got 6% of the vote, but still. But think about this, Jennifer, for 5% tax one time on Elon Musk, you could have universal childcare in America, $10 a day for every family. That's one person, one time, 5%, and he wouldn't even miss it because the market would grow by 15% and his wealth would still grow. And yet they're opposed to something as basic as that.
You know what bothers me is when we talk about taxing these obscenely wealthy people, we have to throw in these caveats, and they'll still be rich. We have to placate the feeling, and he'll still earn more, and his net worth will still be big. We always have to placate and defer to their feelings. And if you think about Elon Musk and how he is online, not to mention the back-to-back sig heils that we all witnessed with our own eyes after Trump won, then he regrams or reboosts or retweets all of these like Holocaust deniers, white nationalists, and then his own former BFF, Donald Trump, the one who just fell in love with the Egyptian president, said that Elon Musk gets more subsidies from government than anybody else. When Elon Musk was like, hey, the reason that when they broke up, and it was like, hey, the reason that Epstein files aren't coming out is because Trump is in it. And Trump is like, hey, Elon Musk wouldn't be rich without the government. And so it's amazing to me how we have a system that allows people to universally bash the government all day long, regram, retweet Nazi shit on a site that he had to pay $40 billion for, however much it was. And he is profiting from the very system that he benefits from, not to mention per MAGA's ideology. This isn't my ideology. This isn't your ideology, but per MAGA's ideology, we can't let immigrants come in here and take our money and our jobs. And Elon Musk is a fucking immigrant. It's just, I feel like my brain is spiraling over this.
Well, he's the right kind of immigrant from their perspective. They don't want immigrants from certain countries coming here, but of course, South African, they're fine with a white South African. But the reality is that you're right. I mean, Obama made Elon Musk. I mean, that's not exaggeration. I was in the Obama administration. They gave him a loan of hundreds of millions of dollars for Tesla. Tesla was going bankrupt. And Anna Ashe, who is no longer in Congress, who represented Palo Alto, will tell you that Elon Musk used to call her every week, begging her, can you please do something for the Obama administration? I'm going to go bankrupt. Literally used to call this member of Congress. So Obama gives the loan. There's a mistake made when we gave that loan. One, we didn't require him to have labor neutrality. So he builds Tesla without union labor. That was a mistake. And that we did not take some share, some a part of Tesla for those loans. And so he builds all this wealth on the backs of taxpayers. And he acts like he's totally self-made. The other thing is that Obama's defense secretary, Ash Carter, helped him get the SpaceX contract, saying that we wanted him to have the contract instead of Lockheed and Boeing. And he's got no acknowledgement of any of those contracts. And then out there saying, well, he's a better allocator of capital. This is the thing that drives me the most crazy. I mean, that Elon Musk is an allocator of capital and the government can't do anything. The government's the one that invented the internet with Vint Cerf at DARPA. The government is the agency that has led to a lot of the fundamental scientific advance that these tech billionaires are capitalizing on. The problem with Musk is that you have, first of all, 3 times the concentration of wealth than in the Gilded Age. So 19 billionaires have about, now trillionaire too, have about 12% of the economy. That was in time of Rockefeller, Carnegie, and Morgan, only 4%. So we got 3 times the wealth concentration. And whatever you thought of Rockefeller and Carnegie, and they were certainly not angels, they built things like public libraries. They built University of Chicago, where I went to school. What are these billionaires doing? It's just like they hang around, some of them with Epstein. They're trading money. It's not like they're engaged in civic projects of we're going to build universities, we're going to build hospitals, we're going to build libraries, we're going to take care of people who are homeless. And that's, I think, part of the other anger here. They've got wealth concentration. They're buying off politicians, and no one thinks they're really doing things for their community or country in terms of a civic way.
Yeah. And then like Elon Musk is just like chronically online. I mean, it would be sad if he didn't have the money to get the help to treat all of his many disorders. And I think considering our country has such a low voter participation, and that's by design, with a lot of the Republican voter suppression laws and tactics. But I really want us to continue to talk about this because we have to turn out in a manner that's too big to rig to give you guys in the House the ability to go after these people. And if Jeffries gets the hammer, are y'all going to hammer down on them in the House?
Well, absolutely. And the first time I heard the too big to rig was on your show. I don't know if you coined that phrase or others did, but you're absolutely right. And we have the opportunity to do it because people are really upset at the war. They're upset at Epstein. They're upset at food prices, at gas prices. They want to vote them out, but we need to come out in huge numbers. And I do believe that once we take power, there has to be accountability. There needs to be accountability for Elon Musk. They're celebrating that he created 4,400 millionaires, but they don't talk about the 4.5 million children around the world who he possibly sentenced to death by dismantling U.S. aid. He needs to answer for that. He needs to be subpoenaed. He needs to face investigation. He needs to answer for what he did with DOGE. That it's not just let's move on. And we will use the Oversight Committee and the Judiciary Committee to hold people accountable who violated the law on ICE and abused power with ICE, who violated the law in killing people on boats in the Caribbean, who violated the law when it came to Iran and some of the strikes, who violated the law with DOGE. There will be accountability. There needs to be accountability before reconciliation. And certainly there are voices like Robert Garcia, J.B. Raskin, myself, who are for aggressive oversight and investigation, including of the Epstein class.
That's why the three of you are some of my absolute favorites. I love that we need to keep pushing the talking point that you just had, that we don't need to celebrate Elon Musk making other people millionaires. If you are the party of pro-life, like you say you are, MAGA, he's killing millions of the poorest people on the planet. And so I think that hypocrisy there is something really stunning. Congressman, thank you so much. I hope that you come back to New York soon, or maybe I'll come to Washington.
So, Alex, the next tweet from Elon Musk was, time to sue this liar, which is a little bit different than Ro Khanna is great from 2022. It has a little bit of a taste that is, let's say, a little bit more bitter than
definitely
sweet.
Taking a turn.
And so Elon Musk said, time to sue this liar. Now, before I get to Ro Khanna's response here, I just want to make something we do as a service to people in the media is fact check them, and when they say things, I think it's important that they get the fact checked, just like they were really big on during the 2016 to 2020 time period when Donald Trump was in the office the first time. Everything was fact checked. Everything was fact checked. Every sentence, everything uttered. From May 30th, 2013, Alex, Tesla Motors pays off its government loan 9 years early. Tesla Motors paid back its Department of Energy loan of $456 million 9 years early, showing Republicans what can come of a good federal government investment in green tech. No, just that. And
it's not just that. It's not just that. It's that the loan that came to Tesla was because they had already bailed out GM and Ford. I'm not sure actually about Ford. Definitely GM. As it was the 2008 chaos. And basically they kind of had to, do something for other automakers in order to not appear to be favoring specifically GM, aka government motors. So, and as you say, right, Tesla paid it off 9 years in advance. And okay, did you want to take a cut of the shares? I think that is actually a great idea. And the governments that assist companies should take shares. But as he says, we forgot to put conditions on the game. Okay, I guess you can come back now 20 years later and invent some, I suppose. That's how it works, right? I don't think Tesla would have gone bankrupt but for that money. It definitely was a much tougher time. I think that they funded a company that definitely was pushing was positive for the agenda of the Democratic Party of solar and electric vehicles and batteries and whatever. And frankly, they got a lot more than they bargained for in terms of progress on all those things. I mean, we have electric cars today because of Elon Musk, or as this woman seems to be pronouncing it, Elon Musk. Like, I don't know what's their pronunciation, but whatever. You know who I'm talking about. Anyway, yeah, Gator. I don't know, man. Like, they said so much shit in that, like, 5-10 minutes, whatever that was, that I could keep going for days. It is just absolutely wild.
Isn't it a bit obscene that Ro Khanna would phrase something as a loan, but then go on to describe it as if it was a gift? When you pay back a loan, unless you're saying that he paid back it and it's only on paper that it's called paid back, where the funds never actually remunerated, like you didn't actually pay back the money, but you marked it paid. Like there were some PPP loans and stuff that were forgiven during COVID, so that I guess you would call it paid off as a lie, but it wasn't really paid off. You were just no longer owe it. But unless it's that situation, it is.
But he also said, for a one-time tax, he doesn't say it's a wealth tax, by the way. So it's not a tax on income. It's a tax on everything you have and already have been taxed on. Anyway, for a one-time tax, we could fund all of school for 1 year, you fucking moron. So next year, you're going to have to come back. So you are now comparing a supposedly one-time thing with a thing that runs out after a year. So what are you even talking about? Like, what?
Ro Khanna is great. Ro Khanna is great.
I think Ro Khanna is engaging in class warfare because he's only a centimillionaire, or a quarter billionaire, if you like. And he is fighting the trillionaires. So good on
the next little fact check I'd like to do as a service here. I'd like to point out before this fact check, Alex, that election fraud ideas are no longer just a silly conspiracy theory that dangerous people like Donald Trump propose, because their entire conversation was predicated on the fact that the next election is going to be stolen by
Too big to rig, right? They invented too big to rig. I don't know. Talk to Brett, man.
Well, the goofy origins of Trump's too big to rig mantra from March 25th, 2024 in the Washington Post. The reason casinos make money, or at least most casinos, is that the odds are stacked in their favor. The extent to this advantage varies by game. It's generally smallest in craps, but over time, the house comes out on top because probability says it will. This is what it looks like when someone says something is rigged. The chances of one thing happening are constructed to be higher than the chances of something else happening. A loaded die won't always land the way you want it, but it does more often than it should. It's rigged. Were American elections rigged in the way Donald Trump suggests they are, the only way to overcome that bias would be to dismantle it. Sure, you can beat the house for a while, maybe long enough to make a profit and hustle out the door, but you don't beat the house by betting more and harder. If you want to unrig a blackjack game, you have to change the way the game is run. At recent rallies, Trump has taken to demanding that his supporters overcome the rigging that he says has prompted his losses in 2020. It did not, by voting more heavily. This is summarized tidily as too big to rig. So Ro Khanna is really impressed with the phrase too big to rig that he first heard from her, which she copied off of Donald Trump, because now, again, it is okay to believe that the other side is going to steal elections from you. It's allowed
gambling. Now. Elections are not gambling. I repeat,
no,
elections
they are not.
They are not in any way.
Well, let me put it this way.
They have nothing to do.
It's like gambling to me. Because you guys are putting wackos in office. You guys are putting some Looney Tunes, and that's gambling with my
well, look, that is true. And I can... here's the thing, right? I am as upset as anybody else about the coming wave of, should I say communists or should I say morons? I don't know. Whatever this is that's coming, okay? It's really, really bad. But I want to say that in the New York primary that people are upset about, the people who got elected, the number one slogan was "fuck AIPAC." Okay, so unfortunately, a lot of this, from the point of view of the administration, is self-inflicted, because the actions of the administration in completely destroying the coalition that Trump had put together have left people who are upset about, certain foreign policy decisions, or maybe all of them, no other valid electoral avenue than, unfortunately, what we're seeing, which is catastrophic. But I don't know what to tell these people that no, you can vote for what instead. I have nothing to tell them.
Well, before I go with Ro Khanna's response here, I would like to point out for listeners who are not necessarily regulars around here, I'm the resident Elon Musk skeptic. I like him less than our wonderful co-host Alexandros Marinos does. Alexandros has followed Elon Musk quite closely over the years, and in some ways looks up to him for inspiration and motivation for his own activities. And
I have tempered my wild time fanboyism in recent years, but not enough to have hit my head like these people seem to.
I'm not trying to disparage you as being an irrational fanboy. I'm just saying between the two of us, I'm the critic. You approve of him more than I do, and the fact that I have defended him, let's say, in this exchange right now, is a consequence of how stupid Ro Khanna was being in his criticisms.
There was nothing there, man. It was just absolute pastiche of stuff that sounds somewhat incriminating, I guess. Let's talk about this Lancet paper that came out. Do you know where these numbers of the 4 million children that he has sentenced to death personally apparently is coming from?
I always imagine that there's some sort of estimation about where they took some calculation somewhere that was used to promote an activity, saying the lives saved per year.
It wasn't 4, it was 14. Apparently, the Lancet said that by 2030, so not like imminently or something, by 2030, the consequence projected in a model in Excel, as you probably would have imagined, may have been as high as 14 million people. So 2 Holocausts, basically. Let's just put it this way. Elon is being charged personally, by the way, right? Nobody else at DOGE did anything. Trump has no responsibility. Nobody.
Well, no, that's not true. That's not true. Luke Ferritor was also partially responsible.
Well, then they should split it 7 and 7 at least.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Shouldn't be responsible for 7 million. Come on now. Anyway, yeah. So this is the kind of idiocy, right? But since not all of those children have died, presumably every other government that's not stepping in to fund the same programs must be itself also responsible for those deaths. What the fuck?
Before the election, I was invited to Benjamin Boyce's podcast, and he was asking me about some of my thoughts. And I, as your resident anarcho-capitalist, of course, I am going to be more in favor of just cutting government programs like that. But I did mention a bit of caution that just because the government it might not be the place where an activity should be engaged in or an institution should be housed, does not mean that activity was worthless and that nobody should. And that when a government is doing something, often that crowds out other people from stepping in, and that there may be a desire, instead of necessarily just cutting everything off quickly, to perhaps reduce and slide and transition away from the government doing it so that someone else takes it instead of leaving a complete vacuum, because the complete vacuum could have unforeseen consequences. So I said that. And now, just politics is not exactly an unforeseen consequence I particularly care about. But for example, if you just all of a sudden shut off a money spigot and there were people relying on resources that the money was being spent on, that's a problem for those people. And it might be desirable to replace those funds, as you were just giving by example, perhaps other countries if they wanted to step in, or just private charities trying to organize. But the fact that nobody in the chain of thought here goes, oh, we need to replace this activity, oh no, the government was the only one who could possibly spend money on something.
By the way, there's another funny meme going around, which I find hilarious, which is that Mackenzie Bezos, do you know who I'm talking about?
I do. I do. And if I can just say, while she's not necessarily the most beautiful woman of all time, I don't understand Jeff's transition.
Right.
She's attractive. Yeah, she's attractive. She's attractive, but I don't understand his swap. Whatever he swapped.
He went from the frugal guy that Amazon literally had doors for desks, because supposedly they were frugal. Do you understand what I'm saying? They didn't have desks at Amazon in the first several years, and then they continued it as a kind of a LARP because supposedly they didn't have money for desks, but they had doors on like a kind of a stand as a desk to emphasize their frugality. The oldest video of Bezos you can find, or at least one that I found from like, I don't know, 1999 or something, is this guy that looks nothing like the Jeff Bezos you know today.
Right.
And the journalist is asking him like, why do you have this beat up like Honda that you're driving around? And he's like, well, you know, but you're like a multimillionaire and stuff. He's like, well, you know, it works, you know, I don't need anything. Anyway, that guy is now the guy that built a boat that was so big that they really needed to dismantle a bridge on the way out from port for the boat to go through. So let's just say he's had a bit of a change.
He did go from a dweeb to looking like a Terminator who might have been sent back in time to find John Connor. But I just don't understand his wife swap. I mean, look, if she left him, okay, you really have no choice. But I thought he divorced her and just swapped her for this Botox bimbo who I don't understand for the life of me. It looks like,
yeah, sure, but I mean, it's not just the looks that you're getting married to. Yes, and let's just say this woman made off with I don't know, $40 billion or something.
Yeah, a lot of billions.
Well, and the rumor on the street is that she funded a lot of the Summer of Love type organizations. Just to be clear, a lot of wokeness became of that $26 billion, $40 billion. But apparently she has in total by now donated up to $26 billion, which is fascinating because none of that $26 billion was able to save the 14 million children that Elon Musk supposedly murdered.
Well,
so
I lied a little bit, and I have one more fact check to do on them before I do Ro Khanna's response to Elon Musk's sue this liar. They were lamenting that Elon Musk is a trillionaire. And Alex, I would like to let you know that last week you were absolutely correct that at what the weekly game everyone would be playing would be in the aftermath of Elon Musk becoming a trillionaire. And the independent.co.uk, Elon Musk is no longer a trillionaire as fortune drops out after SpaceX sell-off. So now, Alex...
Yes.
They're griping that he's a trillionaire, but he's no longer a trillionaire. So what's their problem?
Well, that he is a multi-centi billionaire or something. Like there's no logic to it, man. Like it's literally numerology at this point. It's like this number good, this number bad, this number very bad. What are we talking about? Like, I mean, seriously, these guys, like the fucking Ro Khanna was like, well, at least Carnegie built the libraries. I mean, he did build them at the end of his life, but fuck that. Okay, let's leave it aside. Like Elon fucking built a global internet network for people in the most remote areas of the world.
Yeah, but the internet existed because of the government and DARPA. Like, and then Ro Khanna is saying that as if he gets to take credit because now he works for the government.
That's right. And by the way, the government is he's one person. You are comparing a single human being with the entirety of whatever the entirety of the US government has done for the entirety of its existence. We're talking about things that happened before Musk was born. Okay, like the creation of the internet with DARPA was in the 60s. I don't know, maybe Elon was like 3 years old or something. But like we are taking credit for a very wide period of time, and Elon isn't done yet. Like, what the fuck are we talking? It is, man. It is the whole thing.
Yes, it's bonkers. I don't know. But here's Ro Khanna's response to Elon Musk's saying he's going to be sued.
Today, Elon Musk threatened to sue me, and he called on the Justice Department to put me in prison. That's right. The world's richest person has spent all day tweeting going after me. Why? Because I cited an academic study that his DOGE cuts may lead to the deaths of millions of children overseas. Elon, I thought you were a free speech guy. Why not debate me on these issues instead of threatening lawfare? You're not going to be able to intimidate me. I'm the guy who stood up to the Epstein class and worked with Massey to get the Epstein files released. I'm the guy who stood up against AIPAC and called out a genocide. And I'm the guy who stood up to billionaires in my district who ran someone against me and still called for a wealth tax. So I'm not going to be intimidated or silenced. I need your help. I need the help of folks to sign this petition and help me stand up to power and fight for truth and justice.
Now, Alex, I would like to
He loves the attention, though. Just FYI. This is his best moment. He's like, I'm getting all the attention.
I would like to just fact check a little bit more now. This was not a free speech related sort of response. Okay. Yes, of course, there was some aspects of it because he said, I'll sue this liar, which is defamation, which already falls under a legal civil use of the law, right? But he says, okay, lawfare. I object to lawfare just for citing a study. That's not at all what you did, Mr. Khanna. You also said that should you get back in power and control the House, that you were going to unleash all of the power that you had as the House in order to investigate and hold all of these people, quote, to account, which means whatever the hell you want it to mean. It doesn't have to have a definition going in that you're going to abide by.
A big sort of red mark on Elon was that he was retweeting all these bad people and blah blah blah. And Ro Khanna not one time did he say, well, like him or not, he can have whatever opinion he wants. That's not my beef, right? Did you hear him say that? Because I didn't. All I didn't hear him say exactly is that he had to pay $40 billion for. By the way, what was that? Like, why did she say Twitter, which he had to pay $40 billion for? Yes, he paid retail price for it. Like, what's the? I don't like. Why are you mentioning this? Like,
I don't think. I think you get a little confused. I think, Alex, that you expect the words people say be the sole source of the content and meaning when it's not. In fact, it's half the source of the content and meaning, and it's the tone and inflection and the vitriol with which and the snark in which it's said that contains majority of the meaning. So you could say anything, and as long as you say it with vitriol and disgust, it is right. Communicating the correct impression to the audience that man bad.
Can you pronounce the name Mask? Like she's
So I hope it's clear how the two stories that I talked connect, and it is really the fact that people can do anything that's impressive, and if you violate their political standards, you are now a horrible human being who deserves the full weight of the U.S. government to come down on you. Like Luke Ferritor was not even big balls,
right? Okay? No, he exactly. He was. I mean, it's funny because in the TechCrunch article I sent you, it was commenting that Luke Ferritor was a Thiel Fellow, and much like those Thiel Fellows, he was a very nice, gentle, clean-cut young man. And the journalist noted that he called her ma'am. Like, this is the kind of guy we're talking about. Like, a journal calls up and is like, "Yes, ma'am." Like.
And okay, I was only 25. I'm not a ma'am yet. That's my mother.
Yes, you're a teenager. We should be having sexual relations. Anyway, sorry. But there's a funny little anecdote that you're going to enjoy here, which is that back in, so it must have been like summer of 23, August, when I picked up like 2 or 3 different anti-Elon moves, some from the government. It was a Sam Harris episode. It was like, I just detected a vibe shift. And I was like, oh my God, they're coming after Elon. Like, this is going to get real bad, right? And of course, who, other than Kavanaugh, Chris Kavanaugh in this case, not the Supreme Court judge, came after me for being paranoid and conspiratorial and whatever. And, a few years later, he has conducted 2 Holocausts. So
you mean he took objection to you pointing out the most obvious thing that was going to happen in the world?
At the time it did feel a little .connecty, but I was, having followed the whole story for a while, it was clear to me, but it wasn't necessarily clear to everybody else. What was, the vibe shift that was taking place. But I feel like that if I've ever been vindicated on anything, that's the one thing.
Well, I mean, listen, again, for the newer audiences, I'm not the resident Elon fan. I criticize him quite heavily at times, but I try to be unbiased in my perspective, at least in the sense that when things align with my politics, I point them out in the way that they align with my politics, and I don't twist my politics just to target an individual or decide that, I don't like them, therefore my politics don't typically don't apply here, and I'm just going to rail against them. And so the fact that this comes out as heavily pro Elon is just a consequence of how stupid and vapid that that whole conversation was. The Ro Khanna is trying to use the power of the U.S. government, something that he's like taking credit for making him really brave. I stood up to the Epstein class. You work for the U.S. government. You didn't. It's really not this. You're not going to be assassinated. I'm sorry to let you down, Mr. Ro Khanna, but nobody is attempting to assassinate you from the Epstein class. Okay, you haven't even like if the way that people's attitudes about the Epstein releases are, nobody's actually particularly satisfied. Everyone is really still upset about Epstein. They don't feel that the correct documents were released, and the ones that were released were redacted in the wrong ways, and there wasn't anything that was released that actually solidified the story in any particular way, that people now have a coherent picture of who Jeffrey Epstein was and what the hell he was up to on that island. Like, there really isn't. I mean, if you take the non-important view that Epstein was just some guy who happened to have parties and talked a lot, you have plenty of things to say that's all that was there, because there isn't anything salacious enough to point out to a complete lifestyle that's revelatory in who this guy was. But if you pay attention at all to Epstein and some of the things that came out during those, you just wind up having more questions that don't have answers. In particular, when you see something that's particularly weird, odd, and salacious inside of the documents, you don't have any direction as to what the FBI or the investigative apparatuses did with the information in majority of the cases. Occasionally you get a nutso that calls the hotline going like, I watched Donald Trump throw a brand new newborn baby that was his into a lake or something and watched it drown. And you get like something like that. And they go, yes, this person was crazy. And you get that resolution. Okay. But majority of the stuff, it's like there's no resolution and no way of interpreting the data other than, wow, that's really peculiar. Can we expand on that more? Nope, we're done. These are all the documents we have. Bye.
Never shall we talk about this again. Shall not be mentioned. We're done.
So everyone's unhappy with that. So, I mean, he's taking credit for, I guess.
No, I mean, he deserves credit, okay? He did good work. And I have said before that Ro Khanna is the only person in the Twitter files who spoke privately to the Vijaya, whatever her name was. Remember this person safety woman?
Vijaya Ngadi.
Right. He talked to her privately. I think there was like Slack messages or texts or something that was leaked. And he was like, what you're doing here with the Hunter Biden files is a violation of the First Amendment, and you should really rethink your course of action there. Okay. Right. Which is, I think it's praiseworthy, but
all right.
So I'm going to say when he does something good. At the same time, what he's talking about here is not even wrong. Like, it doesn't. They're literally just words. There's no even the coherent claims are hard to put together properly. Like, what are you even saying? Like, he has an amount of money that crosses a magical number where it is an outrage, and the other woman was like, oh, well, we're not going to care about their feelings. Who says that Elon's feelings are hurt when you say that you want to take his private property and do what you want with it? It's not his feelings that are hurt. It is his sense of right and wrong. Like,
yeah. Well, the inference from her tone in that particular section of the exchange, and we have to, say, oh, but he's still going to be rich. Don't worry. We have to worry about their feelings. It's like, okay, so are you suggesting, because this is the inference I take, that you are actually attempting to impoverish him by this? this capture that you're doing? Like he has the like I said, they think it's all hungry hippos, and that's how the entire economy works. That's like the way that they imagine it working. That there was just all this money there, and he was gobbling up with his hippo just all the money marbles.
Right, and he's not letting anybody else have any of it. So
yeah, no money marbles.
I think I have a better way of explaining what we were trying to explain the other time when we were saying like he's a trillionaire, I guess, in some particular way, but he hasn't taken anybody's money which is that imagine somebody has oh my God, I'm blanking out, the Mona Lisa, right, in their house, and let's say that the valuation of the Mona Lisa has now changed, and therefore they are they have a property that is now more valuable than it was before. They don't have, in some sense, yes, they are richer. In another sense, they don't have anything they didn't have before. And this is exactly the same thing. Elon created Tesla shares and SpaceX shares out of nothing, right? Then he, through a number of developments, the world recognized that those things have high value. And therefore, when you back calculate the number of shares he has with the value that the world agrees they have, then you can say he has all this money. But he still has the same number of shares and often the exact same shares that he had when he started those companies, and they were worth zero. It's just that, the world has now revalued those assets, and therefore he's considered to be wildly wealthy.
Again, it's slightly worse because the amount of volume that we're talking about is a extremely small portion of the float that is used in the calculation. Because on any given moment, the amount of shares traded at the price that is then just multiplied by however many shares he has is minuscule compared to the number of shares of a total. So we're not talking about an actual idea that the market demand is that price for all of his shares. It's not that price for all of his shares. It's only that price for the shares that are currently available to buy.
And just to double down on this point, even though I don't know if we've lost the audience at this point, but like we have multiple streams now. Remember, we're just multiplying the audience across all. Yes, very good. What I'm saying is that the reason you invest in SpaceX and Tesla is to have to be partnered up with Elon Musk and his ventures, right? Were he to sell those shares and therefore and resign from Tesla, say, those shares immediately would nosedive in value because he is himself no longer invested in that company. Like literally the value of the shares is the fact that he has a bunch of them. It flows the other way.
Well, so what you're saying is that Elon Musk himself has value. Why aren't they just taxing Elon Musk for being himself?
That's right. They should just go in and perform take a portion of his brain. Right? I mean, that is true taxation. It will be very taxing. Anyway.
All right. Alex, we are going to move on to some Traces of AI Dystopia here. I hope you are ready. Okay. We're gonna come in here with something that does give credence to the version of AI bubble that I have told you I am accepting as what it means to question whether or not there's a bubble, and that is something that is a recent trend coming through the auxiliary markets, which are businesses that have gone all in on using the generative AI like Claude and ChatGPT, and then doing so at a time period where the costs were not necessarily directly connected to their activity, and that the costs, the reality of the costs came a little bit later.
Workers workers forced to use AI at work are now using it for tasks like converting PDFs into other file types. Today in Token Maxing Fails, we get into consulting giant Accenture, a company that itself reportedly required senior staff to start using AI or risk losing out on promotions, that is now trying to stop non-technical workers from blowing their AI token budget on trivial tasks like the PDF conversion, according to leaked audio files 404 Media listened to. It's actually not our engineers that are driving token consumption. It's a lot of the non-engineers that are doing some of those behaviors you were talking about, just as Quack, Accenture's agentic AI strategy lead, said in a recent internal meeting. Quack goes on to say that he knows that people aren't using slideshows these days, but he has some. And as he appears to be presenting the presentation, Stuart Henderson, Accenture's client group lead, interrupts, joking that he hopes that Quack didn't just convert a PDF into images and then into markdown files. Quote, I'm learning that this is one of the big token tours, turning PDFs into markdown. Is that right? He asks. That's when Quack says that's what Accenture's own data shows. Quote, we're hitting this inflection point where AI is becoming material to the cost structure, spend is becoming very unpredictable, and leadership, especially at the CFO, CEO, and CIO level, are still asking the question of whether they're getting value from what we're spending on context of AI. The news highlights a major shift in these companies and industries pushing for AI. Some AI providers like Copilot are now charging customers per token rather than a flat subscription fee. Uber recently capped employees' use of AI tools like Claude Code and Cursor, and that came after Uber told employees to use AI as much as possible, and Uber CTO said the company had blown through its entire AI budget in just 4 months. It also undercuts that narrative that superpowered engineers generating mountains of code are behind the AI boom. In many cases, it's non-technical staff burning through tokens for non-specialized tasks.
So, Alex, I find that very humorous. So now to the non-technical person who is listening to this right now, I want to explain some of the importance of what was just described in there, which was using something like ChatGPT to convert a PDF into something called Markdown. Now, Markdown is just a text file. So any text file you've ever opened on your computer in life, that's just what Markdown is. It just has a special set of formatting codes that just declare something a header, might declare something bullet list. And you can just think of it as being a incredibly simple word processor without having all of the fancy fonts to show what you're actually attempting to do. It just describes how the document's going to be. It's called Markdown. And it's extremely popular because it is just text. And using a LLM to convert a PDF to Markdown is a little bit like getting in your car to hand deliver a postcard to somebody across the country. It is a long way around to do something where there exist tools that are already pre-designed to do such a thing that you would never actually have to spend the cost of a LLM to do that for you. So that's an example of the wrong people using the wrong tools for the job, and one of those tools happens to be exceptionally costly if you're using the latest and greatest models. And I think that's a consequence, Alex, of all of the companies suffering from FOMO, not wanting to be left out of the AI boom and trying to believe that if you just use it, you're going to extract all sorts of productivity gains. Now, again, there are productivity gains to be used. I use it to make productivity gains every day, but just using it does not make productivity gains. That is absolutely for sure. Alex, any thoughts?
Yeah, I can actually take the bullet here and defend the use of AI in this way. So when you hear a company saying like, we will demand that you are using AI in whatever way, right? Now you might wonder, like, why would they do that? Are they complete morons, right? And yes, they might be, but I will say sometimes large companies do things that appear idiotic, and in fact, when you sort of look inside the parapet, there are reasons why that is being done the way it's being done.
It's not that they're stupid, it's just the incentive structures might be stupid.
No, it's that their executives are stupid. And therefore, in order to get an old dog to learn a new trick, you literally have to tell them, yes, I don't give a shit if you even use it to transform a PDF. I want you using Claude for this stuff for a while so that you can get acclimated into it. And then eventually you'll start using it for other stuff.
All right.
You see, I think that's a Thiel man. I'm not sure if that is the rationale. It kind of sounds like, look, I'm trying to figure out how to say it in order to protect the guilty. I've been exposed to companies that are startups, that are, cutting edge organizations that are building, technology that is fairly, at the bleeding edge. And their engineers, like, seriously deep into the whole GPT boom, were not using AI at all, right? Like, because they just had a workflow and it worked for them and they were using it, right? And that's fine in a way, but at the same time, if you are future facing just a little bit, you're going to say, like, well, okay, that might be fine for now and for tomorrow, but like at some point there are going to be use cases here that these guys are not going to be aware of because they are just not hip with the technology, so to speak, right? Anyway, all I'm saying is that, this may be a very ham-fisted way to achieve something that otherwise would be even more costly, which is to get your, 50, 60-year-old executives to, or even 40-year-olds, frankly, or who knows, maybe 30-year-olds at this point, I don't know, to actually engage with the tools, because otherwise, like, who knows when they'll get around to it. It's like
I'll cede that you have a very persuasive argument. I think it does fail in the sense that the chat interface was so universally adopted by people that you didn't necessarily need too much encouragement to get people to try to use it. I think
you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised. There are a lot of people
I'm open to being surprised. Absolutely.
So I encourage you to look into the adoption of the personal computer. For the longest time, executives would have their secretaries type stuff for them into the computers because they just were not into that sort of thing, right? Before eventually they were dragged kicking and screaming into, getting a computer and learning how to use it. So I think there's definitely a lot of people who are using this stuff for many, many things. Potentially some of them not necessary. Who among us hasn't told Claude to convert a PDF though? Anyway,
I have never told Claude to convert a PDF. I have told it to scan a PDF for a particular subject matter, but I have not told it to convert a PDF. In every single workflow pipeline, I have always used Pandoc to go from PDF to Markdown whenever I've needed to go from PDF to Markdown or Markdown to PDF. I always make sure the tools that I insert in the pipeline are correct for the purpose. I do not.
Okay. All right. Anyway,
I am a responsible developer.
Okay, sir. Yes, your use of tokens is better than mine. But all I'm saying is that, I'm sure there's been waste, but there is waste and waste, right? And sometimes you strategically accept a certain kind of waste in order to avoid another kind of waste.
Well, Alex, you want to go back down memory road just a little bit here for indulge me here before we move on. I would say that the technology that we're currently talking about, that everyone has been, sort of acclimated to recently, hit a big point of awareness around 2023, late 2022, early 2023. Is that a good place to mark the time period?
Yep. Yeah, November to February was
what was your first in pipeline usage of it? Not just chatbot stuff, but like actually you building the completion into a pipeline to be able to use it for a custom purpose.
I don't know.
Oh,
yeah. I mean, I've tried all sorts of things, but we could argue whether it's been released or not released or whatever.
My first usage was actually to improve OCR. So from the earliest models, I forget what it might have been, but the actual earliest crude stuff, it probably was just 3.0. I realized that one of the best benefits of having something that was literally there to try to predict the next token in completed sentences, the best usage for the lowest hanging fruit would be to repair OCR that might have had trouble. So if you have a scanned document, so for those who are not technically inclined, what I'm describing is you have a scanned document, something that you put into a scanner that is from typed text that you have. Sometimes the characters are difficult to make out. They might be old. Maybe it's something that you found on the internet that was scanned maybe in the 80s, that was from the 60s. It's not particularly great. There's a technology called OCR that attempts to take that image and turn each of those individual characters into just regular text you could copy and paste. Well, if you have a bad OCR, what happens is you'll get part of the text that is great, and then something it couldn't identify. Let's say that it thinks the letter I is the letter L, or reverse, or it gets really wrong, or it's a whole sequence of things that it gets particularly wrong, etc. Well, using the OCR to get the text as accurate as possible, but then passing it through to like ChatGPT as a middleman and say, hey, correct this so that the sentences look as plausible as possible, actually could go a long way to making that OCR pretty good. I mean, you had a much higher success rate of interpreting the document when you did it that way. So that was my earliest usage to try to extract the maximum amount of value out of that system with the least amount of possible complication. There you go, Alex.
I mean, it's fascinating that this technology was built for translation to begin with, right? Transformers. Yeah. So you never know.
Well, I thought they were there to fight the Decepticons, but I guess, nobody cares about interstellar defense anymore. I'm the only one who...
Anyway.
All right, moving on. Alex, meatier subject here on Traces of AI Dystopia. Trump administration asks OpenAI to stagger release of new model over security concerns. This comes from theinformation.com. For AI companies on the verge of releasing cutting-edge new AI models, there's a new normal in the wake of the Trump administration's tense showdown with Anthropic in the recent weeks. On Wednesday, for example, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman informed staff during a Q&A session that the company would release its latest model, GPT 5.6, in a limited preview to a small group of partners, according to two people familiar with the matter. The company's biggest rival, Anthropic, followed a similar course in April with Mythos, a new model with powerful cybersecurity capabilities that it shared with select partners rather than opening it up to the public. The reason for staggering release, Altman explained, the federal government asked it to do so. Altman said that this was in the best path for widely releasing the model as soon as possible, said one of the people. In a Thursday memo, Altman told staff that the government would be approving access customer by customer during this preview period for GPT 5.6. He added that he hoped there would be a more general release a couple weeks later if all went well. OpenAI staffers had been working closely with the government agencies over the past month to preview its latest model, including when Altman was in Washington, D.C. in early June, according to the person familiar with the matter. The request to do a staggered release came from conversations with two key government agencies, the Office of the National Cyber Director and the Office of Science and Technology Policy. Even so, after OpenAI had shared its plans for the limited release with top government officials earlier this week, Altman still received a call from Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick cautioning the company against launching without receiving approvals from other agencies, according to a person familiar with the call. Quote, "We've made clear to the U.S. government that this is not our preferred long-term model, and we'll work with them and others in industry to achieve a more sustainable approach for future releases," Altman said in a Thursday memo. The episode reflects the ongoing confusion with the Trump administration and private sector over how AI companies should handle the launch of powerful new frontier models in the wake of the White House's decision earlier this month to impose export controls on Anthropic that forced it withdraw its latest model, Fable, from the market. It also raises the question of whether the government's oversight in these new models is actually voluntary, as the Trump administration has insisted. Earlier this month, Donald Trump signed an executive order on AI that gave his administration 60 days to come up with a set of rules for how AI companies could voluntarily submit their models to the government before releasing them to the public. Little is known about what that framework will look like. That's in part because the Anthropic White House showdown has thrown a wrench in the discussions around the framework, according to one person with knowledge of the discussions. Both industry representatives and government officials are looking to see how the situation shakes out before finalizing portions of the framework, they said. The White House's Anthropic actions have raised fears among policy and AI industry leaders that the government has created a de facto licensing regime for the new frontier models while it continues to work out the specifics of the executive order's framework. After all, just how voluntary will its new AI system be if the administration can also force models off the market when it has concerns about them, as it did Anthropic? Arbitrary, unknown, non-transparent license requirements are far worse than red tape, wrote Neil Chilson, the head of AI policy at the think tank Abundance Institute, on X after the Trump administration's export control. Spokespeople from the White House, the Office of the National Cyber Director, and the Commerce Department did not respond to requests for comment. Some in the AI industry hope that the Trump administration's AI framework will eventually put a more orderly process in place for giving the government an opportunity to review new models before they release to the public. A previously unreported meeting on June 9th between administration officials and AI companies provides some clues about what the AI industry would like to see in the framework. At the meeting, the topic of how the program will deal with open source AI models came up, according to one person familiar with the session. A representative from Reflection AI, a US-based open source model provider, argued that open source models should have exemption from the framework based on their capabilities, the person said. Currently, Chinese open source models such as DeepSeek have a substantial lead over other available open models, and Reflection has not yet launched a public model. Other people familiar with the meeting stressed that discussions were preliminary and focused on what benchmark models would need to reach to be considered covered by the framework. One person who was briefed on the session said the representative's Office of National Cyber Director, who led the meeting, talked more than attendees, which also included representatives from OpenAI and Meta platforms. According to multiple people with knowledge of the meeting, one high-profile company was notably absent from the meeting, Anthropic. That's because the administration didn't invite the company, one of these people said. The snub was a sign of the tension between the administration and the company that would erupt just a few days later when the White House imposed an export control on Anthropic, forcing the company to withdraw its most advanced models from the market over national security concerns. Anthropic had worked ahead of time with the U.S. government to identify security vulnerabilities in Fable, and officials did not object when the company notified them it was planning to release the model. Trump's executive order had been the result of weeks of collaboration between tech companies and the Trump administration, which wanted to create a system to work with the AI industry on assessing the cybersecurity risks of new frontier models without imposing a mandatory review system. Language in the executive order reiterated that nothing in the framework should be construed to be a governmental licensing or pre-clearance requirement. The final version of the order laid out the broad strokes of a program where companies could provide the government with access to their models up to 30 days before releasing them to other trusted partners, while specifying that agencies would have a 60-day window following the release of the executive order to flesh out the exact details of the system. The June 9th session was the first time that the White House hosted a joint industry meeting to seek feedback on its developing plan, according to multiple people familiar with the event. The meeting occurred the same day that Anthropic had released its Claude Fable 5, a version of its frontier model Mythos, built with guardrails to make it suitable for public release. A few days later, after Amazon CEO Andy Jassy reported vulnerabilities in the model to top White House officials, the Trump administration would ban foreign access to Anthropic's most advanced models, which led Anthropic taking down Fable and Mythos entirely. Now, Alex, we do have a continuation story involving, which I've seen you resharing tweets about, which is the accusation that Alibaba has been distilling off of Mythos, which we'll get to. So right now, do you have comments? I know that you were, on top of the OpenAI evolution of this Anthropic problem. So
yeah, so I'm happy we covered this last week because I want to take a little bit of a victory lap of sorts, even though it's bittersweet as usual, which is that I was fairly early in saying, like, this is a national security story. This is not a sort of freedom of speech or commercial meddling, or that there were additional dimensions to all of this, which now has become pretty well understood. And unfortunately, because it is a national security story, what we're seeing is the emergence of a new quasi-regulatory regime, which now, has expanded to OpenAI. And there was another story that was saying that apparently the only company that it has not signed this sort of voluntary framework by the government is Meta, and it's being pressured to, I repeat, voluntarily sign the deal. So, make of that what you will. But I think one interesting thing is this tweet that I've already sent to you by David Sachs. Let me just find it again. So David Sachs, for people who don't know, used to be the AI czar in the administration, and as far as I can tell, I don't know when he stopped being that, but he has stopped being that. And he has recently sort of been opining about stuff and sort of being somewhat, saying like, I think the last statement I had from him was saying, it's Darius' fault, and I hope this doesn't become a new regulatory framework. This tweet, again, for a former but really close to the administration sort of member, I think is as bad as it gets, which is to say, it says, a year ago, President Trump declared that America was in a global AI race and that the way to win it was to be pro-innovation, pro-infrastructure, pro-energy, and pro-export. President Trump was exactly right. We deviate from that strategy at our peril. And he's attaching a screenshot from a story saying, China has matched Anthropic in cybersecurity, resetting the AI race. So I think you can take from that there is a struggle inside the administration. Unfortunately, a lot of the pro-AI, pro-progress, EAC, whatever you want to call it, people in the administration have now moved on. And the people who are left and are, I shit you not, are making the decisions are people like Howard Lutnick. Howie
Lutnick is my favorite. He's my favorite of all time.
I've taken to calling him Nutlick, so I don't know if you want to. Yeah. Probably not respectable, but I don't know, man. Like, what does this guy know about it? Exactly. How the hell is he making policy? I don't get it.
Okay, so what? So let's talk. Repeat some of the high level concerns here. Okay, we have a situation where a company like Anthropic releases a model that the capabilities of which are seen as a cybersecurity threat. And the reason they were seen as a cybersecurity threat, for those who are not completely caught up on the story, is that the Mythos model. So this is a new model, very similar to the ChatGPTs that you might be familiar with. Some people are familiar with Claude from Anthropic, some aren't, but it's very similar to the ChatGPTs. But this capability that it has, in addition, is the ability to, let's say, hack computers to an exceptional degree. It finds a lot of security flaws that have been in code, that has been in what they call production, meaning out in the world, in use for decades, things that were known to be the most secure systems in existence. When they were previewing this model internally to the company Anthropic, they were finding what they call zero-day vulnerabilities that had never been discovered by anyone else before, and they were finding them in high quantity and very fast. Which means, hypothetically, if you were just to release this model into the wild very quickly, there would be a large scramble. Nefarious actors would want to use it to target systems that had not yet had their vulnerabilities found, find those vulnerabilities and exploit them. And on the flip side, the people who would be tasked with protecting those might be slower to react than the criminal actors that would be engaging in the activity. So part of what Anthropic does is they believe that they are the most secure and the most security thinking individuals, thinking long term about human survival with AIs coming in, and that's one of their big focuses. So what they tried to do was lock down some of the capabilities for their models that go to the consumer to be able to perform these incredibly sophisticated attacks. But as part of the stories go, and I believe, Alex, you have some nuances and some adjustments to the timeline, but it said that an employee of Amazon was able to do what they call jailbreak, which is just a way of tricking the AI into doing the thing that it was told by its creators not to do. So the creators told their Fable to not permit the users to perform these types of hacks, and by simply just treating it, I believe, Alex, the story goes, just by saying, hey, look, I'm trying to protect my system here. You wrote the code for this. Do a security review on the code you wrote, which was a lie to the AI. It didn't create the code. It was actually hacking it. It was able to bypass the securities, which then primarily, in my opinion, because the CEO of Anthropic was demanding that the White House be able to restrict models from going to market if they were deemed a safety risk. In somewhat of a ironic way, the Trump administration said, "Okay, sure, you can be first. We're prohibiting your model from going to market," and that caused then this now. Game last week or the week before, I had said that this is a problem because Mythos is now not necessarily anything impressive except for the fact that it has had the most training, and that its ability to do these things has no relationship necessarily to the talent that Anthropic has internally when it comes to engineers. At this point, we are embarked on exploring the possibility for a horizon of just what pure raw, what they call compute, can do. The training process and the amount of processors we can throw at it to be able to create one of these LLMs. That process has not necessarily had a major breakthrough that gave what Anthropic was putting to market its extreme capabilities, which means that every single company that was participating in this is only... Their models don't have it only because it's the next one that will, or, one or two iterations, which are just weeks away. And that's where this OpenAI model comes in, which is, it's the one that's just weeks away when Mythos was being launched.
Right. So I guess maybe to try to put that, I would say that, yes, the Anthropic team does have a lot of talent, and clearly they got here first. But I think what you're getting at is that they haven't sort of articulated a unique sort of finding of genius that, were it not for them, nobody would ever find. Like, they just got there a little bit faster than the next guy and the next guy and the next guy after that. And the second or third guy that gets there is going to be a Chinese guy or lab that is going to release that model as open source, and literally everybody in the world is going to have it. So what it is they are trying to accomplish with this sort of sectioning of the models is unclear. However, I will tell you something which unfortunately is not looking good, which is the following. Anthropic, as you see, have had two demands of the U.S. government. First is to regulate the models, which in some way, unfortunately, again, like very, very sadly, seems that they're winning at, because now not only Anthropic has been limited, but also OpenAI and potentially other companies. So they are kind of getting what they wanted, but they are asking for a second thing. And that's where all this distillation attack stories are coming in. They want open source models to be regulated, right? Now, pray tell, how does it help the United States if United States people, like people inside the American internet, don't have access to open source models that literally a random kid from Tajikistan has access to?
Would the push? Would you not cynically take my position, which I've had for many, many, many months, that a push to regulate open source models is part of the rent seeking that these companies have been engaged in from the beginning? Okay, just. So,
but it is, it's disturbing, because essentially what it means is that Anthropic internally has already given up on, just being the leading lab forever. What they want is to lock up the U.S. market specifically, and what happens with the rest of the world happens, right? Like, they literally have already thrown in the towel for just leading the planet, and are just hoping to be allowed to own the U.S. market.
Okay. Well, we have a request to speak, and even though I haven't necessarily directly opened it up, I'm going to open up some comments as we continue. It was Siderokratos, who has requested to speak, who I've approved. So if you are up on stage, go ahead, Siderokratos, and tell me how to pronounce your name so I can get it right next time I try.
There we go. He's got it. Siderokratos. Guys, look. I'm in LA right now. It's pretty hot. I just watched the Canada versus South Africa. I don't know if I'm adding value to this space, but it seems like I was at the tail end of some large language model conversation there. Look, it just seems like, I don't know, if SpaceX is a thing, and space is the final frontier and it's exponential, like I don't know. It just seems like, if you mine an asteroid and there's ways to get minerals off of there, I mean, it just seems like what you're going to do is just completely, destroy the whole resource sector on Earth. And the reason why I bring that up is like, I don't know. It just seems like I don't think people take into account the exponential effects of either space or the digital world in terms of the economy. I think people are a little bit too focused on, the here and now in terms of like where we're at in like the physical world. But I don't know if the Strait of Hormuz taught me anything. It just seems like the thesis is more and more going towards like the U.S. petrodollar is going to go towards a more either like exponential age through space or through the digital world. But look, I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity. I hope I didn't derail the conversation. It's hot here in LA, and I'm just kind of happy Canada won.
Well, I hope being up here cooled you down a little bit, and that you're not going to suffer from a heat stroke while you're in there. Get into some AC, and hopefully the prices for running the AC aren't too high because you're next to one of those data centers, those evil data centers.
I think we just encourage them to break several laws in Europe. I don't know if you're supposed to be doing that, Gator.
Breaking laws in Europe is what I do as a favorite pastime because they can't get me over here. It's pretty easy to break laws in Europe, actually. Yeah.
Well,
all right. Well, go ahead.
One thing I'll remark though is I don't know if you guys have been in LA, but I don't know. LA is not like, I don't know. I'm kind of underwhelmed, and maybe I'm just not in the right places. Like I'm even staying at a hotel in like Inglewood, and man, it's kind of like crummy here. But I digress.
I think LA doesn't exist per se. I think LA is not a city. It's like a bunch of different cities that happen to blend into each other. So it really depends where you are.
Yeah, it's a bunch of different cities in a trench coat. Is what you're saying?
That's right. That is correct. Exactly. The trench coat is called LA.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Well, moving forward, still on the same sort of topic here, Alex. I have the MTS live video from a hugging face person talking about the Anthropic situation that you retweeted that I'm going to play here to augment our discussion that we've just had here.
So another big news story of yesterday was Anthropic accused Alibaba of doing distillation attacks, which is, there's two perspectives on this. One is like, these are these evil people who are like stealing the capabilities of our models, violating our terms of service, like fraudulently accessing our product. And then the other is like, what do you mean? They're creating accounts and they're paying for tokens. And, you can't accuse people of stealing when you stole the entire internet. So which one of these two positions are you closer to?
Well, I think distillation is a very common, practice that everyone is using. I wouldn't be surprised if Anthropic used distillation in the past for some of their models, for some of their specialized models, using kind of like someone else who's better. For example, when OpenAI was better at coding, like you use this model to kind of like help you a little bit in the training of your coding model. It's something that everyone uses, but that is not, the main reason for success. Like if you suck with or without distillation. It's just kind of like a little bit accelerating thing, but it's not what makes you good or bad at training models. So if you stop distillation tomorrow, the Chinese labs won't like go down and disappear because they're still gonna be good. It's not really gonna change the game. And the only point that I'm a little bit biased towards that like if there was big competition problems, right, where it's like, oh, it's really unfair, it's biasing competition, but it's hard for me to accept this one because frankly, Anthropic, OpenAI, they've been the fastest growing companies in the world. They've become overnight $1 trillion companies, and so I don't think they have competition problems. It's hard for me to say like, oh, poor Anthropic, poor OpenAI, you're getting unfairly competed with when you're like the fastest growing soon to be biggest company in the world. Competition has been okay for them. If anything, I think they need more competition than less competition.
Yeah.
Because we're heading toward a world where like a few companies are completely dominating, concentrating all power, all capabilities, all wealth. And that's much more dangerous than them maybe, losing a couple of $1 billion of revenue, I think.
Totally. That's funny.
So it's just hard. It's just hard to, empathize and kind of like think that this is an important problem. I think there are many more, much more important problems than that in the world of AI right now.
Okay, so for those who are not familiar with what is being discussed in there, he's talking about something called a distillation attack. Now, calling it attack might be a misnomer in some ways. It's not.
Probably doing by Anthropic. They're calling it a distillation attack is like an Anthropic term, just FYI.
Yeah, so attack makes you gives the impression that something is being attacked, and that is not what is happening. So what these large language models are trained by giving example text and then the following text. So originally, before they were chatbots, you would literally just start feeding it text, and so it got good at predicting the next text that would follow any given piece of text that it was given. But then when they turned them into chatbots, they realized that sort of if you did a breakdown where the predicting thing that you were doing was questions and answers, that you could turn this thing that was just giving you the next sequence of text into something that was more conversational, that this sort of training was something you could just do. Now, the training process gets a little bit more complicated with that, with some of the things that they can do now, where they have the thinking models and stuff like that. It gets a little bit more involved, but at the base, you can just still think of it like that you're just giving it a sequence of text and having it predict more the next piece of text. And even the question and answer is just giving it questions and then predicting answers. That's all you're doing. And they're doing this with lots of pre-made now sets of inputs. So they have all of this stuff that they train it on, and it's all ready for them to do, and they just keep adding to it. A distillation of this is when you take an LLM that you have access to and you train your model based off of its outputs. So you hook it up to ChatGPT or Claude and you give it a question. That's the part that you're training it on. And then you get Claude's answer. And now you train your model on that. And that's your training data. So the distillation process is largely that. You're just using the other service and training your model. Now, of course, that means that your model is going to have a lot of properties of the one you're kind of learning from. You're learning from this model in this distillation process. And so you're going to have a lot of the same properties as the model that you're in using their nomenclature attacking. And it allows you to basically copy the model, and therefore you could run it locally. And of course, it's going to be less powerful. It's not going to have the same power, although you could focus it on just a subset of its knowledge, like hacking, and get a really powerful hacking model that doesn't necessarily have a lot of other information in it or have a lot of other capabilities, like translation to other languages or stuff that they're baking into these models. But that's what a distillation attack is, so that we can continue on the discussion of what we're having here. So Alex, this is the thing that Anthropic is now accusing Alibaba, which is a Chinese company, of doing. It's one of the largest tech companies, if not the largest tech company over in China.
Yeah, I mean, they have many, so I don't know. But I have two tweets I'm rapidly trying to find that I wanted to read you about this, which I found very humorous. One is by Pliny the Liberator, who has appropriately been doing a lot of the jailbreaks that you hear about. And he says, it's only Claude if it's distilled in the Silicon Valley region of California. But the more interesting one came from another account, Baselord. He says, situation detected. AI labs launch a 1 quadrillion token distillation attack on everything humanity has ever recorded. And that's really the thing, right? Like, these things have trained on the internet, and I'm not like the commies that are like, oh my God, now that means you have to pay us all for what you used.
Well,
but like, let's have a little bit of perspective.
Let me add a caveat.
Yes.
Some of the things that have been on the cutting room floor over the months are news stories that we just never got to in Traces of AI Dystopia, among which are lawsuits, at least one major lawsuit that Anthropic had to settle, where it was accused by book publishers of stealing books, not paying for the content, and then training its models off of large corpuses of
Do you know what they
unpaid.
did to overcome that obstacle, Gator? It's very funny.
Go ahead. But I'm just letting you know that it's not purely the free stuff that's on the internet. It's, copyright works and stuff like that.
No, what they did is they made a machine that literally scans a book destructively on purpose. Like literally they bought used books and they put them in a scanning shredder such that by some magic in the IP law, they have paid for the IP rights.
Okay. But to the point of the joke that you were talking about, that their distillation process was taking things that are a mix of uncopywritten and copywritten works and training their data off of it, and now complaining that other people have stolen their stolen goods.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So yeah, because essentially, right, what is an LLM doing? What is a lot of machine learning doing? It's trying to approximate a function, right? A function has inputs and outputs. So these things are trained on inputs and outputs of humanity, right? Humans coding and, talking shit and answering questions and wondering about the nature of reality and whatever, right? Okay. But now their own outputs are entering the internet, right? And appropriately, I guess, like predictably, they're being used to train other models because that's how it works. And now they're like, oh my God, I can't believe. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like like the guy from Hugging Face said, I'm just finding it exceedingly difficult to feel sorry for a company that, Gator, I don't know if you are aware of this, or most people are aware of this, but the current valuation of Anthropic, were it to go public, is $3 trillion.
Well, that's only 2 Elon Musks, so
that's depending on which day of the week you're asking about it, but yes. Anyway, yeah, so it's wild, man. Like, but again, this is I feel like it is becoming increasingly clear that Anthropic has a very specific strategy, and unfortunately, a lot of things seem to be going their way. But again, like the other speaker said, we are seeing. I mean, I guess I'm going to connect it to a larger pattern, so I don't want to connect it to. I don't want to put words in somebody else's mouth. But we are seeing America display some sort of solipsistic tendencies of like, if I ban it from my borders, if I take it over, if I sanction you, if I stop China from getting oil, like just all these sort of things where you put a barrier, right? Where the thing, either your opponent doesn't get a thing or you don't get to see a thing or whatever, then it doesn't exist. Then it's fine. Then the problem has gone away. But the world does not work that way at all. And I want to see America sort of compete, not sort of shut its ears, shout la la la, and hope that the rest of the world doesn't catch up.
Let's try to approach a couple specifics, because I think we have a lot of value that we can add in the levels that we can discuss this issue, to try to bring its importance into clear focus for people. The United States government, as is clearly evident, wants to be bring us ahead in this AI race. They want America to be the leader in this AI frontier, and they do not want countries, particularly ones that they view as pseudo enemies like China, to be able to outcompete us in such races. And in countries like China, there is a great ability for them to have the government be the ones that choose what to focus on, which means that the Chinese government could decide almost on a whim that they are going to throw an incredible amount of resources in doing somewhat of a modern day space race with us. Okay. Similar to the Cold War space race that we had with the Russians in attempting to get to the moon, and the USSR in attempting to get to the moon and things like that. You can just take the entire government and decide to throw it all of its resources at one problem, or as much of its resources as you want. And a country like China could throw a considerable amount of its resources at such a thing, and we have an interest in not letting them get ahead. Now, when you try to balance that with this idea of, let's say, safety concerns, where you don't want your other people in other countries to use the technology you've just created as a weapon against you, we have a situation in the minds of some that is similar to the impact of something akin to nuclear weapons, but in a different sort of capacity. You can think of it as the ability for your adversaries to quickly produce dirty bombs at large mass, but in sort of the AI way, where if Anthropic releases the model that I talked about earlier, where its ability to hack systems is up until this moment unprecedented in human history, and at the scale it could, your adversaries could gain access to it and use it against you before you have a time to clearly adhere to it. That gives the U.S. government a reason to be interested in sort of controlling the way that those systems are released and the mechanisms that they have to provide safety assurances, or even just particularly controls against who is permitted to use them and who is not permitted to use them. But that has a huge problem for companies like Anthropic and OpenAI. Right now, even though they are engaged in extreme rent-seeking behavior, the gains from that rent-seeking behavior are not born to them yet. And rent-seeking behavior is when a company acts to extract profits from things that are not purely economic in nature. So what they are trying to do is get the government to create rules and regulations that sort of protect them in ways that make it harder for competition to come in and outcompete them in certain ways. So often one of the ways of doing rent seeking is literally just asking for regulation that is costly, so that your new competitors who don't have the same amount of financial resources you do cannot afford all of the cost of complying with the regulations. So you wind up just having a few large companies able to actually perform the regulation requirements, and therefore they are protected from market entrants.
To give an example
to compete them.
To people that will help bring it home, there was a time when Uber was pushing against regulating ride sharing, but then people were shocked to hear that Uber changed its mind and was pushing for regulations for ride sharing because it would be, it was now large enough to be able to afford the lawyers and whatever to jump through any hoops that any local governments would put on them. But by the same token, a startup would not be able to do so, hence protecting Uber's position in the market by making it harder for competitors to come in.
Thank you. Perfect. So this rent-seeking behavior that they've engaged in has not yet borne out. It has not yielded them any of benefits, and in the immediate moment has only borne them a cost. So Dario Amodei, who I have previously pronounced as Amodi because I'm just reading it and not going by the way everyone else is pronouncing it, Dario Amodei is the CEO of Anthropic, and he has basically gone around on a tour perpetually for the last several months, talking to everyone who will listen, going, the thing that I'm making is the most dangerous thing in existence, and I'm only giving us a 20% chance of survival that it won't kill us all, in order to try to scare them into creating regulations.
You want to hear something funny? When OpenAI made GPT-2, they famously declined to release it because they thought that it would be too dangerous. Now, you have one guess to figure out who the lead of that team was.
That would probably Dario, then?
Dario Amodei.
Because he was former OpenAI and then branched off to create.
Because of the safety concerns, apparently.
Well,
but,
one of the earliest ones was fake news.
Not consistent. Yeah,
one of the earliest was fake news. Can you imagine pumping out fake news at scale with ChatGPT-2?
ChatGPT-2 could barely utter a syntactically correct sentence, but yeah. Anyway, long story short, the man is has been on this beat for a long time, right or wrong.
Well, so the cost now has borne, but not the benefits of his rent-seeking behavior. So he's gone around talking about how the thing he's creating is going to kill us all, and we need regulation. And now we have pseudo regulation, which is sort of just the whims of the White House. Nothing that's official, and nothing that is particularly usable when it comes to making sure that your competitors are unable to enter the market as a matter of cost and practice. A new entrant can come in and find themselves at odds with the administration, but that's only after they've done all the work. There's nothing in the middle to actually increase their costs to an appreciable degree. Now, we have a problem in that scenario of a major degree. In order to advance, we need these companies to continue to train newer and newer models. But we now have an invisible threshold of what is too good to release, and no clear path as to what is going to be allowed to be good enough, or what capabilities are going to seem to be as too powerful to release.
Right, and how long you're going to have to wait and whatnot.
Correct. So that's all of the downsides of their rent-seeking activity, with none of the upsides of stopping competition, because anyone can go and still do this, and any company can throw money in. Now, a really rich entrant that's newer is not necessarily going to throw the money at training a new model, but there's all sorts of places that are foreign, which is the sort of the negative consequences from a foreign relations standpoint, or a national competition with something like China, where these regulations aren't a problem, and China doesn't even have to worry about. They already have somewhat of a command control economy where they don't permit their citizens from accessing anything they don't want on their internet. And it's illegal to violate that with, VPNs and stuff, even though, of course, it still happens. It's a much more tightly controlled ecosystem over there where, comparatively speaking, our internet is the Wild West. And you have now a situation where, as sort of a weaponized disruptor, another country could pay the costs, train the models without any restrictions, and then release it into the wild over in the United States, or withhold it and weaponize it against us if it's able to do, some of the hacking that they were worried that Mythos was going to be able to do. So we have a situation now where all of the things that are occurring are all effectively negative, and the best semblance of something positive is that maybe if one of these were released tomorrow, we would have actually all died, and thank God we still have a couple more days. That's about the only thing. It's the only thing at the moment that is could be conceived positive. All of it is negative, and I'm going to blame.
I just want to highlight a particular element that I mentioned last week that maybe people would appreciate a little bit more now, which is that at some point in the sort of this test period that Anthropic created for itself with Mythos, it wanted to expand the number of allowed companies that had access to the program. And the White House said no. And part of the rationale was that to devote additional Anthropic GPU capacity to additional companies to prepare to defend themselves would take away from the NSA's capability to use the same model for offensive operations. Okay, so we are now, so essentially, if you kind of put it all together and kind of look into the future, a company that makes the best model and is a U.S. company under this voluntary quote unquote regime, not only has to sort of plan for giving enough time to, U.S. infrastructure providers to sort of scan their own software stacks and make sure that they have no gaping holes available for others to come through or whatever, but also to provide sufficient allocation in GPUs to the National Security Administration and who knows who else to attack other countries with.
That's going to wind up creating a scenario where effectively the public is one, two, or three models behind what the U.S. government has access to, in order to make sure that the U.S. government has some sort of exclusive abilities that nobody else has.
Right.
That's going to be the first customer. That's going to be the first.
So David Sachs, when he described about it's going to be the first customer by law. Right? You're not allowed to sell it to anybody else. But the way David Sachs described it, it was like, Dario came and told Washington he has a cyber weapon. And, that kind of sounds like, okay, yeah, that sounds bad. But like a cyber weapon could be offensive or defensive, right? Like, so we are now seeing how this whole thing is playing out. And again, like, that's all great, but it is, as you say, like overwhelmingly short-sighted, and most importantly, people can complain about China and this and that. Europe hasn't even been able to distill a model, and we're very close to this good. It's not just like, okay, I can send a few queries to Mythos, and then I can have my own Mythos. Like, it takes quite a bit of skill and capability and a lot of other things in order to be able to have an AI industry that can even, use distilled tokens from other models to get something equivalent. But the scariest part that I've heard about what might be coming down the line, that I want to sort of read for people here, just to put this in your brains, and whatever happens, is this. This is a tweet again I have retweeted, and I'm sending to you, Gator, to attach to the logs. It says China's AI playbook. Okay, this is speculative. It might not be true, but it makes sense to me as a plan. It says China's AI playbook: kill OpenAI and Anthropic with free great models, make it free, then use cheap electricity to export compute as well. Currently, the blocker is chip, but Huawei would catch up soon. Imagine a world where instead of paying hundreds of billions to OpenAI and Anthropic, you pay almost zero to similar level of intelligence with cheap inference. What's going to happen? Right? It is worth thinking about it a few steps down the road here, and saying, if China has cheaper energy, right, and if they're going to catch up in chips, which they are doing day by day, they are going to be able to provide inference for less. And the only thing in the way is not having better models. And at the point that they do catch up, for the rest of the world, what is the incentive to go to Anthropic or OpenAI?
Well, this is just to tie this back to the part that I believe is a valid issue with what they call the AI. The AI bubble, the models themselves, doing all the training on these models is not yet clear that is itself a self-sustaining prospect. Like the amount that you recoup from licensing the models after you've baked the models is not clear that that's where the money is actually going to be found, and that the hyperscalers, the ones that are hosting all of these models, might be where the actual profits are wound up to be seen, because it's going to be in the usage. That means that the only way that you could recoup your expenses on baking the model in the first place is to have a higher per token cost, which would then really be difficult to navigate when it came to comparative advantage of different models per token. It's going to be wild, man. It's going to be wild before anyone sees exactly the correct profitable model, because I don't know do you have any estimates on these last two rounds, what the costs were to train the models? I
think the numbers that are being floated are in the tens of billions. As crazy as it sounds. So, but if you're a $3 trillion company, I guess that's a rounding error, which is just blows your mind just to even try to process how all this is working out. But look, here's the thing, right? And this is where, again, it gets crazy, but the most pragmatic approach might be the crazy thing that Elon is doing, which is to say, all right, if this all comes down to cost of energy, what's the cheapest energy I can have? And that's probably solar in space. Okay. Literally have a panel that's constantly facing the sun, no batteries required, just feeding into an inference chip. And at that point, maybe he's estimating, and I think, there's a good case to be made, that is the sort of thing that he can then get inference for even cheaper than China can get inference on its own thing.
My skepticism.
And give me one second. Give me 1 second to wrap it up, and I'll come back. You'll have the mic. But the last piece of all of this is the chips. But one thing that he has announced that most people haven't really internalized is the terafab, which is that Tesla is going to start making chips. So, it sounds like a crazy Hail Mary, but when you see how it's all coming together, there is a method to the madness. That's all I'm trying to say.
Well, I was going to say, regardless of my skepticism of some of the space plans, I want to ask you if you would predict that the people who are currently complaining about the data centers will still complain about Elon Musk as he starts building them far away from their house, so that they don't even have to be NIMBYs, because the NIMBY is so far away it would be in space.
Not in my planet is going to be the next
space pollution.
Not
space
around
pollution.
my planet.
Space pollution is something I imagine is going to be the
oh my
concern.
God, yeah, right. Anyway, whatever. You can be absolutely sure, and there are going to still show up with guns to take his money, even if his data centers are in space. Which is why I won't be shocked to hear that Elon is cozying up to some other country to offer him quasi sovereignty, because at some point he is going to come to clash with the U.S. apparatus, whatever that.
Well,
that
maybe he can go to the Principality of Sealand and ask them if they could just.
The problem is that you need a principality that is powerful enough to actually protect you properly, right? Because if it's Sealand,
Sealand. Come on, man.
Yeah.
For those of you who are not aware. The Principality of Sealand is an unofficial country that has declared itself off of the coast of England, I think, and it's just it's Google the Principality of Sealand. It's one of the greatest little things that is out there. Crazy rebels who were decided that this one little fixture in the ocean is where they have their country. Anyway, I'm going to close this up, Alex. This with just one small segment that I have here. Will the real Dario Amodei please shut up?
Excellent.
This is from Gizmodo, and I'm not going to go read the whole thing, but just Anthropic's White House negotiations are reportedly on track after weirdo Dario Amodei was replaced. For almost 2 weeks, high-ranking team members at Anthropic have been in talks with the Trump administration trying to get a highly restrictive export control directive lifted. According to the new report from Wired, these talks weren't going well, and that's at least in part because CEO Dario Amodei was involved, but it's being reported that since Amodei left the talks, things are looking up. And that's the part I'll read. And now I have a clip, because Dario Amodei has still not shut up, despite my plea, and he just gave an interview with Bloomberg.
I understand one of your favorite books is The Making of the Atomic Bomb.
That is correct.
Do you see parallels between yourself and Oppenheimer?
The figure I most identified with was Leo Szilard, who, was the one who first basically had the idea that there could be a kind of chain reaction. Look, my view is we're not going to get through this with larger than life personalities or figures who try and be at the center of everything, right? There needs to be a balance of power here, right? There's a lot of powerful actors who have interests here, and the only way it's going to end well for everyone is if there's basically checks and balances everywhere. So in some ways, I actually see Oppenheimer as a failure case, as what should not happen.
You've said there's roughly a 10 to 25% chance of civilizational collapse. That is not insignificant. Is there a scenario where it's something that Anthropic built that caused that?
I certainly hope not. My view is that, the actions that we've taken lower that probability rather than increasing it, right? That probability comes from the very straightforward recipe of the technology, the existence of many countries in the world, the existence of many companies within an economy and new ones created if the void isn't filled. That's a dilemma that we're in. We're trying to act to lower that probability. I think we lower it a lot more than we raise it. But, the inherent property of this technology is that it's unpredictable. And so, we try to build something and test it a lot before it's released. And then the models that are released today are not dangerous, or at least not, really, I think, dangerous outside of cyber. And then we try and iterate and learn from that. So there's like a zillion defense mechanisms. Half of what we do within the company is try and, reduce the risk as much as we can. But, it's never going to be zero. I guess what I would say is, suppose there are a bunch of airline companies out there, and you're like, well, I'm going to make an airline company that's safer. It can both be the case that, your airline company is 10 times safer than all the other airline companies. But, if someone comes and asks you, can you guarantee that your airplane will never crash? I mean, how could you? How could you possibly?
But if there was a 25% chance of an airplane crashing, you wouldn't get on that plane.
That's right. 25% is too high. We're trying to make that probability much, much lower. That is the goal.
Alex, I don't think he does any benefit. I mean, listen, I'm going to continue to call it rent-seeking behavior so that it has an explanation. But if it wasn't rent-seeking behavior, I don't know what he thinks he's accomplishing by doing this.
Look, I mean, you can see what he's saying, right? Like in Nerd Talk and not trying to panic and talk to Bloomberg this way. You see what he's saying, right? He's saying that this technology is going to happen regardless. We're trying to be the actor that is making it safer, right? Us not being involved in it doesn't reduce the risk. So we are trying to be an actor that is in this industry and is reducing the risk. Will we make that risk zero? That is hard to say. Now,
I don't buy that argument when he's the one who's starting the chain reaction of the government reacting to this goddamn chicken little bit.
Dude, this is the problem, right? This is the problem, and this is extremely important. Everybody is conservative when it comes to their own industry, right? So when you are told your model will be regulated, you're like, well, that's completely unfair. But what these people don't fundamentally, I can't blame him, because ultimately he's a normie, right? He trusts the government. He's been told that the government is people who are flawed and whatever, but through checks and balances and whatever it is he's talking about, somehow the system works and we get some kind of regulation which can somehow help. That's how he models it. How I model it is that the government on its own is dangerous if it's given complete and exclusive control of artificial intelligence that is, ahead of everything else. That is an amplifier of the risk. It doesn't reduce any risk whatsoever. In fact, talking about nuclear weapons, only governments have ever used them. And the specific government, to be precise, that he wants to be regulated by, is the only government that's ever used nuclear weapons offensively, right? So it's hard to really transfer yourself to the point where you're like, therefore, I'm going to bring the government in. And it's actually fascinating to try to decode what he's saying, because on the one hand, he's like, there's not going to be one actor that saves us out of this, right? We need to have checks and balances. We need to have multiple different powers that are balancing each other off themselves. And then, almost in the same sentence, he's like, the problem is that there's many companies, and it's not just us, and there's others. And so we need them to be regulated or whatever. And it's not even making sense, right? It's not even wait, right. You just said the opposite in two different sentences in the same paragraph. But if you think about it from the point of view of a normie shitlib, right? Just who I used to be before, COVID gave me a good whack up the head. He's just repeating the stuff that he's hearing and is the most normal and most acceptable thing to say.
You mean unfortunately, he's like a stochastic parrot?
Right. He's distilling the news. And unfortunately, while he is, I have no doubt, a world-class top tier, one of the best at what he does, which is train models, his understanding of both geopolitics and politics is worse than shit. And therefore, he comes up with, things like what you're hearing, which is doesn't even add up. But here we are.
All right. Well, Alex, this has been a great one today. I think this is a good time to try to close us out. I have a Chekhov's gun to close us out with here, Alex. I don't normally have Chekhov's guns here, but we have something in Act 1 that I think will be the end of this episode, if you will allow me. Are you ready for Chekhov's gun, Alex?
Go ahead.
Finally tonight here, our persons of the week. They have just found Gracie the giraffe, missing here in the U.S. for 2 weeks now, just found in Texas. But tonight, at this hour, they are trying to get to her. Tonight in Leakey, Texas, just northwest of San Antonio, that young giraffe missing for 2 weeks from a game reserve has just been found after the entire town came together to try to find her. Her name is Gracie, about 3 years old. She vanished 2 weeks ago near an unfenced area. Immediately, the ranch, the sheriff's office, the community springing into action. Volunteers searching by ground and by helicopter. And look at this tonight. The ranch manager sharing this video. A helicopter pilot with Concho Aviation finding her just about 4 miles from the ranch as the crow flies, but it takes about 50 miles to get to her by car. So tonight they are right now putting together a team of veterinarians and volunteers to try to get to her as quickly as possible and then safely bring her home. And right here tonight.
Hello, David, and welcome to Real County, home of Gracie the giraffe.
Real County Sheriff Nathan Johnson.
We have located her. She's fat and happy and safe. She just decided to go on a little fling and had a bit of a catch me if you can attitude there for a minute. But we've located her. She's safe, and we will be happy to update everybody at the Welcome Home Gracie party. So until then, good night from Real County.
And so we choose the volunteers, that entire community, the vet team, and of course the police, now trying to get to her. And we're glad they think she's okay tonight. We'll keep you posted here this weekend.
So Gracie the giraffe is grounded.
Yep, home of Gracie the giraffe, whether she likes it or not.
So there you go, Alex. We had a Chekhov's gun that I wanted to make sure we fired before the end of the play. This has been a fun one. I think this one was very nice, good rounded conversations, Alex, I think.
I really do think that, somewhere in the intersection between politics, geopolitics, and AI, there's a very fruitful vein for us to keep going into. And I mean, inevitably, given who we are, we're going to continue going into it.
Well, we are now on multi-streaming services, Alex, so this has been an experiment. And part of the experiment was throwing YouTube comments onto the screen. Although I didn't know, I tried to test them in advance, but I couldn't get the test before I went live, and they are very, very tiny. So I think I'm going to enlarge them next time. But I also got to play with some of these things. But it's all, and I've wonderfully made the ability for myself to understand the stats much more complicated since they don't all accumulate automatically. So who knows? Someone listens and watches somewhere, I think. So.
Anyway, thanks for the audience tolerating us. Hopefully we bring something of value, and see you next week.
Have a wonderful weekend, everybody.